I arrived in this world 2 days ago. It's a fantasy land full of elves, dwarves, beastmen, and monsters. At night, all the monsters go crazy and attack everything around them. The only safe places are shelters protected by crystal towers. I inherited a crystal tower on the wasteland, but it was in terrible shape. The previous owner died here, and all the defense towers were destroyed. I spent most of my blue crystals, the currency of this world, just to fix 2 arrow towers and stay alive. I needed workers to rebuild my shelter, so I went to the nearest city on light day, the one day a week when monsters hide. Outside the city walls, there was a market, but even the cheapest workers wanted 2 blue crystals a week, and I only had 5 left. That's when I saw her, a girl in a ragged hood, begging a fat merchant to buy some slime gel she made. He refused and knocked her hood back, revealing white hair and animal ears. She was a beastkin, and the merchant screamed at her to get away. I have a special ability. I can see people's stats. When I looked at her, I couldn't believe it. Her name was Aisha. She had an epic-level talent called quick thinking and skills in both materials science and architecture. Most people don't even have a single talent. I certainly don't. My only skills are architecture and civil engineering, earned from over 10 years of construction work back in my old world. Her status said she hadn't eaten in 4 days. And at the bottom, it read, "Give her a bite to eat and she might follow you." I told her I wanted to hire her. She turned red. She misunderstood at first. I quickly explained it was a job, with food and a place to stay. Her eyes lit up the moment she heard. Food and housing included. The merchant warned me she was dangerous. Beastkin carry something called dark erosion. It can make them lose control, like the monsters. Every city bans them. No shelter wants to hire someone who might turn on you. But I wasn't worried. I have a golden book called the Wonder Construction Guide. One of the wonders I can build is a holy spring that clears all abnormal conditions. If I build it, I can cure her dark erosion whenever it acts up. I also need her for another wonder, the statue of the god of architecture, which cuts all building time by 25%. That one requires 2 workers, and right now I have 0. I offered her 1 blue crystal a week. Then, when she eagerly agreed, I quietly changed it to 1 crystal a month in the contract. She was so happy about getting food and shelter that she didn't even notice. She signed the 5-year contract with trembling hands. And just like that, her loyalty jumped from 0 to 68. Her status still showed hunger, cold, and wandering. But now it also said, "Is this real? Is there really a place where you get food and a bed and don't have to pay for it?" I looked at her and smiled. Time to go shopping for supplies and head back to the shelter. Aisha's loyalty jumped to 62 right after signing the contract. That was higher than I expected. I spent 2 blue crystals on 2 weeks of food, and we headed back to my shelter together. Aisha surprised me. She carried 2 bags of wheat by herself. The girl was strong. On the way back, we ran into Luke Griffin, a neighbor who lives about 4 or 5 kilometers away. His shelter is level 3 with 5 towers and farmland. He was the one who woke me up after the beast wave and left me food. Good kid. When we arrived, Aisha stared at my shelter like it was a castle. It wasn't. Just a crystal tower in the center, 3 arrow towers on different sides, and 1 old wooden house with 4 rooms. I gave her the left room and told her to rest up because we had work to do. I opened the Wonder Construction Guide and selected the Holy Spring. I needed to wash away her dark erosion before nightfall. If she went berserk tonight, I wouldn't stand a chance against someone that strong. The total work time was 12 hours, but with 2 people, we could finish in 6. It was about 1 in the afternoon, so we'd be done by 7, 1 hour before the monsters start attacking. When I activated the blueprint, Aisha yelped. She said something entered her brain. The guide sends building knowledge directly into the worker's mind. I got the same knowledge, but honestly, looking at the blueprint, I was disappointed. The finished product was supposed to be a tiny pool about 1 meter across. That's a wonder? I told Aisha the knowledge was a gift from me and not to ask questions. She was too scared of losing her job to argue. She had just eaten 2 bread rolls on the way here, her first food in 4 days, and she wasn't about to ruin this. We dug, hauled stones, and carved details for hours. By 7 o'clock, I was gasping for air, barely able to stand. I placed the last stone in position. Then everything changed. Golden light covered the entire pit. The small 2-meter hole expanded right before our eyes. growing into a pool bigger than the wooden house. The rough stones turned clear and beautiful like amber. Water bubbled up from the dry ground, glowing with a holy light. It looked like a sacred bathhouse behind our shabby cabin. I stood there with my mouth open. This came from that little dirt hole we spent all afternoon digging? I crouched down and drank some of the water. All the soreness from working disappeared instantly. My energy came rushing back. I told Aisha to drink too. Night was coming. She knelt down and took a sip. Black smoke burst out of her back and vanished. She stood there trembling, tears running down her dirty face. She said the weight she had carried her whole life was gone. The curse that made every beastkin hated and feared. The reason she spent countless nights locked in an iron cage. I checked her stats and nearly choked. Her loyalty shot up to 92. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. Her talent had changed. It used to be epic level, quick thinking. Now it read legendary level, scientific genius. The Holy Spring didn't just cure her curse, it unlocked her true potential. Legendary is the highest tier of talent in this world. I don't even have the lowest tier. My panel is practically blank. I started thinking. With a legendary talent like scientific genius, I could teach her everything I knew from my past life. Architecture, engineering, all of it. Who knows what she could create with that kind of ability? Aisha dropped to her knees in front of me. She said she would be my most loyal follower from now on. She only asked one thing. Please don't fire her. Night came and the monsters poured out. Slimes, magic wolves, goblins. They crawled out of caves and underground cities like there was no end to them. My 3 arrow towers fired blue bolts, picking off every creature that got close. The dead monsters didn't leave bodies. They turned to dust, and the wasteland swallowed them up. I was still worried. I learned at the city that the beast wave 2 nights ago was caused by some kind of magic disturbance. It wiped out a lot of shelters, including the previous owner of mine. Nobody knows when the next wave will hit, but apparently the city hired a prophet who can predict them. 3 arrow towers can handle a normal night, but they won't survive another wave. A new crystal core for 1 more tower costs 1,000 blue crystals. Upgrading my tower's level costs 200. And just keeping the tower running takes crystals every week. I needed money. Fast. I looked at the Wonder Construction Guide and chose the treasure basin. Every monster killed would have a 10% chance to drop a blue crystal. With 300 or 400 monsters dying each night, that's 30 or 40 crystals a day for free. Building the statue of the god of architecture could wait. If I built the treasure basin first, I'd have 2 extra days of crystal income before the next light day trip to the city. We made it through the night safely. In the morning, Aisha was already up. She cooked breakfast, cleaned the house, and greeted me like a nervous maid. I told her to relax and treat this place like home. She took a deep breath and said she'd work hard. I scratched my head. I sounded like one of those corporate bosses telling employees the company is their family. Breakfast was plain. Bread and porridge, no meat, no oil. After eating, I activated the treasure basin blueprint. Complex knowledge flooded both our minds again. A 2-meter altar with a stone basin covered in incredibly detailed patterns. We drank from the holy spring for the energy boost and got to work behind the house. 6 hours for 2 people. We'd finish by noon. While we worked, I asked Aisha about her past. She told me her people, the Sparrow Beastkin, used to live on a dead tree over 100 kilometers away, protected by 2 crystal towers. 3 years ago, a beast wave hit while all the beastkin went berserk at the same time. Some bird demon's cry drove the whole shelter into chaos. When Aisha woke up, everything was gone. The shelter, the towers, her family. She was captured and forced to work as a slave in a mine until the beast wave 2 nights ago, when she escaped and followed a merchant caravan to the city. I felt bad for her, but I told her to save the thank yous and put that energy into working. Then I had an idea. Why waste time working in silence? Aisha had legendary level scientific genius talent. She should learn fast. I started teaching her architecture while we built. Her eyes went wide. She said classes from even ordinary scholars cost over 10 blue crystals each. She couldn't afford lessons from someone she believed was a legendary architect. I told her to pay me back later. 10 crystals per lesson. She got emotional and promised to repay me, not just in blue crystals, but in pink crystals. 1 pink crystal equals 1,000 blue ones. I've never even seen a pink crystal since coming to this world, but I liked her ambition. I started teaching, And within that one session, her architecture skill jumped by 2 points to 9 out of 10. The girl was a sponge. By midday we finished. The stone altar and basin were complete. Aisha carved the last pattern. I pressed the final step in the guide, and golden light erupted. The plain stone basin transformed into a heavy golden vessel with a metallic sheen. The altar expanded into a decorated stone platform with glowing golden patterns. I checked our stats. Aisha's architecture skill broke through from apprentice to expert. My own architecture went from 1 out of 20 to 5 out of 20, 4 points just from building 2 wonders. I grinned. At this rate, becoming a master architect was only a matter of time. The 2 wonders, the Holy Spring and the Treasure Basin, already took up most of the space inside the Crystal Tower's light. I realized they looked too flashy. If someone saw golden altars and glowing pools, they might try to take my tower. I needed to find a way to hide them. Aisha asked what the treasure basin did. I told her she'd find out tonight. We rested by the Holy Spring. The water healed soreness but couldn't fix real exhaustion. Aisha had way more stamina than me, probably from years of mining. She sat next to me, small like a sparrow, chattering about ideas, using sausage tree bark and slime gel for pipes, replacing sewers with slime's dissolving ability instead of building a toilet system underground. The kid had wild ideas, and some of them actually made sense. I was too tired to respond. Class was over for today, but work wasn't. We started on the statue of the god of architecture that afternoon. We put in about 10 hours between us, leaving 38 more to split over 2 days. Aisha took over most of my share when I couldn't keep up. I felt guilty, but my body just wasn't built for heavy labor. That night, we sat outside by the treasure basin and waited. Monsters showed up right on schedule. Magic wolves charged in, eyes glowing red. The arrow towers fired. After the 3rd wolf died, a clear ringing sound. A tiny blue crystal, the size of a bean, appeared inside the golden basin. Aisha's eyes went huge. I couldn't help laughing. I told her the treasure basin collects crystals from dead monsters. She jumped up on her toes, so excited she could barely stand still. I held up my hand, and she slapped it without thinking, then got embarrassed and looked away. But she was smiling. We watched for half an hour, collected 6 crystals, and went to bed. The next morning, I rushed to the basin. It was nearly half full. We counted them together, 132 crystals total, including last night's 6. 130 a day. By next light day, I'd have over 700. Enough to buy some slaves to help with work, though I'd need to think about food and housing first. The priority was upgrading the crystal tower. 200 crystals to reach level 2, which would unlock level 2 arrow towers, strong enough to handle a small beast wave. Safety first. We worked on the statue all day. By evening, we were both completely drained, leaning against the holy spring, drinking the glowing water. That strange feeling again, totally exhausted but somehow comfortable. The statue stood 3 meters tall behind us. Neither of us had any sculpting experience, but the guide's knowledge made our hands move right. We only had to get the rough shape correct. The wonder would perfect itself at the end. 8 hours of work left. One more day? That night, I told Aisha to rest well. She took some spring water, washed her face, and went to her room. Next morning, we counted the basin again. 144 crystals, even more than yesterday. I took 200 and fed them into the crystal tower. The pale blue light grew stronger and thicker, like ocean waves rippling through the air. The dry wasteland around us suddenly felt moist. Aisha noticed it too. With her hood off, I could see the feathery tips of her hair twitch as she sensed the humidity change. The tower's protective radius expanded from 30 meters to almost 50, about half a football field. Plenty of room for more wonders. Upgrading one arrow tower to level 2 cost 50 crystals. I upgraded one for now and kept the rest in reserve. If something unexpected happened, I could upgrade another on the spot. I put 50 blue crystals into the crystal tower to upgrade one arrow tower. 3 options appeared: rapid fire, sniper, or scatter. Each had its own strengths. I couldn't decide right away. Then Luke rode over on his camel beast. He tossed me a bag of warm milk and noticed Aisha working nearby. He warned me that keeping a beastkin was dangerous, but I told him I had a way to stop her from going berserk. He seemed satisfied. Luke offered to deliver milk every day during his patrols for just 1 crystal a month. I gave him 2. The kid deserved it. He had 2 older brothers and barely got any spending money. Before leaving, Luke told me something important. The city's new fortune teller predicted that powerful monsters from the underground city would appear in the next couple of days and might make people sick. He also noticed the holy spring and called it a beautiful pool. I played it off as just a water tank. But watching him ride away, I knew the wonders were impossible to hide forever. I needed to plan for that. Based on the fortune teller's warning, I chose the sniper upgrade for the arrow tower. Half the firing speed but triple the damage, longer range, and it targets the strongest enemy first. If a tough monster was coming, that was the right call. I could always spend another 50 crystals for a quick upgrade if things got bad. At breakfast, I poured milk for both of us. Aisha's eyes lit up. She said she'd only heard that milk was for rich people and tower masters. She sipped it carefully, silently grateful. I told her the meals would get better and the living conditions would improve. A little motivation never hurts. We finished the statue of the god of architecture by mid-morning. Golden light flashed and a towering sculpture over 10 meters tall stood proudly in front of the cabin. Aisha was still amazed by the transformation, even after seeing it twice. My architecture skill climbed to 8 out of 20. Hers reached 3. Then I opened the Wonder Construction Guide to page 2. For new wonders. The Horn of Plenty doubles crop growth speed and adds 50% to the harvest. It needs 1 worker and must be built next to farmland. With the statue's bonus cutting build time by 25%, the work drops from 48 hours to 36. The guardian statues are 4 stone figures that take turns patrolling the shelter each night. Needs 4 workers and 144 hours. The Horn of Submission can make 1 monster within 5 meters obey you when blown. 30-day cooldown. For workers, 48 hours. The statue of the hunting goddess lets each arrow tower train 1 archery master and boosts all bow and tower damage by 50% inside the shelter. For workers, for arrow towers required, 36 hours. My heart was pounding. That last one especially. I could train myself into an archery master. I'd been envious of the Griffin family's bow skills for days. If both Aisha and I became masters, we could travel safely outside, even on normal days. I sat by the holy spring and planned everything out. I needed at least 4 workers. The 2 spare rooms in the cabin could fit them if they squeezed in. I'd build new rooms when I had time. 3 days until the next light day. The Horn of Plenty's reduced 36 hours could be split easily, 6 hours per person per day. The rest of the time, we'd prepare farmland. I'd buy seeds and fertilizer at the city next week. For now, I grabbed some old farming tools from the shelter and started clearing land. I grew up in the countryside back in my old world. This part, at least, I knew how to do. Aisha had endless energy, especially with the Holy Spring boost. I decided to let her handle most of the physical work from now on. In a couple days I'd buy some slaves for labor anyway, and a legendary talent like hers shouldn't be wasted on hauling rocks forever. Sorry Aisha, just hang in there 2 more days. I taught her how to clear farmland and some basics about crossbreeding high-yield crops. She soaked it all up eagerly. By the end of the afternoon, we had an acre of farmland in front of the cabin. The wasteland soil was terrible, almost no nutrients, but crops inside the crystal tower's range mature in 1 or 2 weeks. If I planted beans first, I could build up the soil quality fast. The Horn of Plenty icon in my guide lit up now that we had farmland. I activated it, and the building knowledge flowed into both our heads. Another sculpture. Aisha grabbed her hammer, then stopped. She could feel it. She was faster now. The God of Architecture statue's 25% speed bonus was working. I told her there was no rush. Just finish before the next light day. While she worked on the wonder, I went and built something I desperately needed, a bath. I hadn't washed in days. I made a small pool near the holy spring, ran water from the spring into it, and connected the drain to a water tank by the farmland so nothing was wasted. I put up some stone slabs for privacy. I soaked for half an hour, and it felt like my soul was being cleansed. I officially declared the holy spring the greatest wonder ever built. After I finished, I told Aisha to take a bath too. She turned red. She didn't even know what soaking in a bath meant. As a kid, she just wiped herself with cloth at a riverbank. In the mines, she never got to wash at all. I explained the concept. Get in the water, clean yourself, and she hurried off. Later she came back and kept glancing at me nervously. I found out why much later. She'd used the same water I bathed in because she didn't realize there was a valve to change it. Only after getting in did she notice the drainage system. The thought of sharing bathwater with me apparently made her dizzy. Then thunder rumbled in the distance. Rain was coming. Aisha's ears twitched. She warned me something dangerous was approaching. I looked out and saw it. A massive shape moving toward us. A giant troll, 5 or 6 meters tall, carrying a wooden club. On its shoulders sat a small figure. As it got closer through the rain, I could make it out clearly. The troll was even bigger than a normal one, covered in rotting wounds and leaking pus, like a walking corpse. Green fog surrounded it, and the smell was like a rotting swamp. The small figure was a goblin shaman holding a wooden staff. Aisha screamed. A plague shaman. Her mother had told her about these goblin sorcerers that use dark magic to control monster corpses. If those rotting bodies get close to a settlement, they spread disease. The shaman raised its staff and cast a spell. The goblins and wolves my arrow towers had just killed started standing back up. Dead monsters, fighting again. The pressure on my towers doubled instantly. I checked my money pouch. 36 crystals. Upgrading another arrow tower cost 50. I was 24 short. I sent Aisha to watch the treasure basin and bring me the crystals the moment we hit 24. She ran. I stood there staring at the defense line, completely helpless. I hated this feeling. I swore to myself. I had to build the statue of the hunting goddess. If I were an archery master, I could actually fight back when things went wrong instead of just watching. The arrow towers kept firing all night. The plague shaman's magic was making dead monsters stand back up, so each one took 2 or 3 shots to destroy completely. The level 2 sniper towers still killed them in one hit, but the regular towers were struggling. Rain poured down. In just half an hour, over 200 monsters had been killed, but some were getting within 10 meters of the cabin. I grabbed a farming tool and smashed a wolf that broke through. Blood and drool splattered all over me. I yelled for Aisha to hurry with the crystals. She shouted back she needed 2 more. 2 more wolves charged at me. I turned to run and passed the holy spring. A thought hit me. If the spring water cured Aisha's berserk curse, maybe it would work on crazed monsters too. I scooped up some water and threw it at the wolves. Black smoke hissed out of them, and their red eyes turned clear. It worked. The towers finished them off a second later. Aisha brought me the crystals. I ran to the tower and chose the scatter upgrade. 5 arrows per shot, less damage each, shorter range. Range didn't matter anymore. The monsters were already inside the shelter. The upgraded tower started firing and creatures dropped in waves. Then the giant troll entered the sniper tower's range. The first shot blew a hole in the troll's head. I screamed at the tower to hit the shaman, not the troll. The next shot exploded the goblin shaman into pieces. Without the shaman's magic, the dead stayed dead. The troll collapsed. Aisha and I stood at the cabin door all night, too nervous to sleep. We took turns watching. By morning it was over. I collapsed by the holy spring and drank some water to fight off the exhaustion. Then I checked the treasure basin. It was full to the brim. Aisha threw her hands up cheering. We counted every crystal, 932. The beast wave brought 8 times more monsters than a normal night. 932 crystals. That was enough to buy everything I needed at the city. I noticed we hadn't gotten sick even though we'd been right next to the plague corpses all night. The holy spring water must have protected us. Luke showed up with the morning milk delivery, coughing badly. He said the dead bodies carried plague and his whole family was infected. The city's doctors would need at least a week to make a cure. I filled his milk bag with holy spring water and told him to drink. He took 2 gulps and his eyes went wide. His cough vanished. He felt full of energy. I told him it was a special recipe of mine and to share it with his family. He rode home excited. Aisha and I split the milk, took a bath, and went to sleep. What I didn't know was what had been happening at the Griffin shelter. Old Man Griffin and his older sons had expected me to die last night. A level 1 tower against a giant troll from the 2nd floor of the underground city. They figured I had no chance. Noah, Luke's older brother, had already told Luke to salvage my arrow tower cores if I was dead. The Griffin family had collected cores from dead neighbors' shelters before. It was just how things worked out here. So when Luke burst in shouting that I had plague medicine, they were stunned. Old Griffin smelled the water, saw it looked like plain water with a hint of milk smell, and took a cautious sip. In an instant, his fever broke and his weakness vanished. He felt 10 years younger. He asked Luke if I really gave this to him. Luke nodded and said I told him to share it with the whole family. I slept until 2 in the afternoon. When I woke up, Aisha was already outside working on the Horn of Plenty by herself. That girl really was a self-motivated workhorse. I stepped outside and saw two figures riding camel beasts toward my shelter. Luke and an older man, Old Griffin, his father. Old Griffin thanked me for the medicine water. He said it saved them from serious losses. I told him it was nothing. Luke had helped me plenty of times, and we were friends. He got straight to business. He asked if I needed anything. I took my chance and asked if the Griffin family had any spare arrow tower cores. He stroked his beard and said they had one extra, originally saved for when their tower reached level 4. He offered it to me for 800 blue crystals, 200 below market price. Good man. I told him I needed a few days to gather the crystals. I had enough already, but I needed to buy supplies and workers first. Then he brought up what I'd been hoping for, the medicine water. He asked how much I had and suggested selling it in the city. I'd sent Luke home with that water partly for this reason, to show Old Griffin what I had. The problem was, I couldn't travel to the city safely on my own. The wasteland was too dangerous outside of light day. But Old Griffin had armed escorts and fast camel beasts. If he could take me before light day, I could sell the water while plague was still spreading and everyone needed it desperately. The holy spring never runs dry. Zero cost, pure profit. Old Griffin proposed a partnership. He said if I tried selling medicine alone in the city, the pharmacist guild would crush me. But he knew shop owners who could sell it for us. The split would be 60% for me, 40% for him and the shops. I agreed immediately. It was fair. He was providing security and connections. And my water cost me nothing to make. We agreed to leave the next morning. He'd bring containers. I told him I'd have the water ready. After they left, I felt great about everything. If this worked, I'd have enough money for workers, supplies, and faster construction. Plus, I could reach the city 2 days before light day, which meant 2 extra days of progress. I figured out the calendar. Light day was once a week, and I set it as Sunday in my head. Today was Thursday. Tomorrow, Friday, we'd go to the city. The Horn of Plenty had about 12 hours of work left. Aisha had secretly put in 3 extra hours while I slept. We could finish it tonight. That way, when I bought seeds at the city tomorrow, we could plant them right away. Crops would mean food. Food would mean more workers. A perfect cycle. I rolled up my sleeves and joined Aisha. That evening, golden light flashed and a horn-shaped sculpture appeared beside the cabin. My architecture skill jumped to 12 out of 20. Aisha's hit 10. Next morning, I counted the crystals from the treasure basin, 96. Fewer monsters after back-to-back waves, but still good money. I had already filled our biggest wooden barrel with holy spring water and set it by the entrance. Old Griffin arrived with Luke, his other son Noah, and 4 camel beasts pulling a small cart. He delivered the arrow tower core as promised. I told Aisha to store it. When he saw the barrel of glowing water, his eyes lit up like he was staring at liquid gold. He rushed his sons to start pouring it into sealed clay jars, shouting at them not to spill a drop. I told him Aisha would be coming with us and could ride in the cart. Old Griffin didn't even blink at her beastkin appearance. He was smoother than his son. Then he offered to sell me a camel beast for 50 crystals. I'd been eyeing those animals since I got here. They looked like a mix of a bull and a horse, with 2 big horns and incredible stamina, fast enough to outrun magic wolves and strong enough to carry 500 pounds. He called them the wasteland's finest workhorses. I looked at the massive beast and thought the word workhorse felt a little insulting to it. But I said yes without hesitation. It took about an hour to reach the city gates. We only ran into 2 packs of magic wolves on the way, and Luke and Noah scared them off with their bows. Old Griffin took charge of the medicine water and promised every crystal would be accounted for. I glanced at his stats to be sure. His status said, excited and pleased. He saw me as a quality investment target he couldn't afford to miss. His talent was a rare-level ability called business sense. He and both his sons were expert-level archers. For now, the old man wasn't planning to cheat me. I headed into the city with Aisha. Beastkin weren't allowed to stay in the city overnight, but even during the day, people stared. The chatty little sparrow who never stopped talking at home went completely silent the moment we entered. I had over 1,000 blue crystals now, much more confidence than my first visit. The commercial street was packed. 2 beast waves had driven tower masters from all around to trade supplies and share information. I overheard people talking about the fortune teller's latest prediction. The back-to-back waves were caused by seals breaking in the underground city. Monsters from the third floor and deeper were pushing the upper floor creatures to the surface. Things would calm down for a couple weeks, but after that, much stronger monsters would start roaming at night. Weaker shelters were being told to surrender their towers to the city or merge with stronger ones. I needed to strengthen my defenses. Fast. First stop, a clothing shop. I bought myself a black coat, a shirt, vest, and leather boots, plus a sturdy work outfit. Then I told the shopkeeper to outfit Aisha too. She tried to refuse, but I told her it counted as a work expense. She practically glowed with happiness and followed a servant girl inside. She came back wearing a brown hunting outfit that made her look like a sharp little huntress. Then she noticed the extra item I'd bought, a black and white made uniform with lace trim. Her eyes went wide. She refused at first. I bribed her with a dress. She caved, muttering that at least it was convenient for cleaning. I kept a straight face. She gave me a suspicious look, like she'd just discovered a strange hobby of mine. We changed clothes and finally looked like a proper tower master and his aide instead of two refugees. Next, I needed seeds. We turned a corner and found a tiny girl, barely a meter tall, screaming at a shop owner. She was cursing him out for lowballing her prices. She said her seeds came from a famous southern basin and they were high quality. I activated my ability and checked her stats. Her name was Fia Ford. She was a halfling, not a child. Her talent was epic-level quick thinking. Her main skill was plant science at 19 out of 20, 1 point away from becoming a master. She also had geology and brewing as side skills. Her status read, furious, hungry, mildly infected with plague, and desperately wanting to advance to plant science master. Aisha stepped forward and called her, little girl. Fia exploded. She yelled that she was old enough to be Aisha's mother. Aisha jumped back in fright. I stepped in and calmly said I was interested in her seeds. She took a breath and opened her enormous backpack. The thing was as tall as she was. Inside were neatly wrapped seed packets. Vegetables, premium wheat, all plump and fresh. I asked if she had beans. She looked up at me and guessed right away, newly cleared land. I nodded. The halfling knew her stuff. Fia said her seeds from the Thousand Bird Basin were famous for high yields. She wanted 20 blue crystals for the whole lot, or I could trade rare seeds she'd never seen before. I noticed she was 1 point away from becoming a plant science master and had been traveling the world collecting seeds to find that breakthrough. I wanted her. Not just her seeds, her skills. I offered her a 1-month contract at my shelter to help with farming. Base pay of 20 crystals, with bonuses based on harvest results. She took the deal immediately, bragging that no one in this backwater could match her plant science. Aisha watched the whole exchange and quietly noted that Fia had been completely played. I gave Fia money for her seeds and sent her to buy fertilizer while I went shopping for the thing I needed most, workers. Aisha and I walked to the slave market at the edge of the city. The smell hit us before we got close. Rows of tents with cages inside, people locked up like merchandise. I hated it. But in this world, contracted slaves were the most reliable people you could get. The Crystal Tower contract was bound by the gods. Even your own family might betray you, but a contracted slave never could. The merchant showed me a tent full of strong, red-haired refugees from the northern wars. I scanned everyone with my ability. Nobody had special talents. The best ones, rare talent or apprentice-level skills, cost 50 or 60 crystals each. Not worth it when I just needed muscle. Then I thought about it differently. Aisha could work all day without getting tired. If other beastkin had similar stamina, they'd be way more efficient than human workers. I asked about beastkin slaves. The merchant said they weren't allowed inside the city because of the berserk risk. He gave me his brother's card and pointed me to a trader named Tiga outside the west gate. The scene outside the city was even rougher. Tiga greeted me eagerly. He said the recent beast waves had wiped out many beastkin settlements, and his people had rounded up survivors to sell. Hearing that, Aisha trembled beside me. I knew she was thinking of her own people. I asked about types. Tiga glanced at Aisha and understood my situation. He said they had dog beastkin and lizard beastkin, but no sparrow beastkin. Aisha didn't know whether to feel relieved or sad. Prices ranged from 3 to 30 crystals. The lizard beastkin were incredibly strong but looked terrifying, covered in scales with vertical slit pupils. I couldn't bring myself to look at them directly. I was about to pick 4 ordinary dog beastkin when my ability flashed purple on one of them. A female dog beastkin named Harper. Epic level talent, craftsman spirit. Her main skill was forging at expert level, 3 out of 20. Her status showed hunger, fear, a knife wound on her back leg, and one line that stopped me cold. For my daughter, I must survive no matter what. I looked more carefully. Hidden under Harper's ragged clothes was a small dog beastkin girl. An epic talent in forging. I wasn't letting this one go. I checked the little girl hiding behind Harper. Her name was Pello, a dog beastkin with a rare level talent called brute strength. No skills yet, but rare talent in a child was still good. Both mother and daughter had gifts. I scanned the rest of the dog beastkin, over 30 of them. I found 3 more with talents. 2 females with rare abilities called super smell and animal affinity, and 1 male with a common talent called night vision. None of them had any skills. 5 total. That was my limit. I wanted more workers, but my shelter couldn't support them. I could only carry enough food for about 10 people per week, and I couldn't make the trip to the city on my own. I'd have to wait until I built the hunting goddess statue, trained someone as an archery master, and bought a cart. Then I could make supply runs safely and expand. The slave trader charged me 90 crystals for the 4 adults and threw in Pello for free. I also bought 5 tents for 2 crystals. Winter was coming and tents wouldn't last, but it was all I could manage for now. I stocked up on extra food, a jug of cooking oil, and 2 hens, loaded everything onto the cart, and waited for old Griffin. He came back beaming. The medicine water was a hit. He'd signed deals with 3 of the biggest shops in the city, 2,000 bottles total. The shops paid for crystals per bottle. My 60% share came to 1,200 crystals. He handed me 1 pink crystal and a bag of 200 blue ones. A pink crystal was worth 1,000 blues. He slipped it to me quietly, too many eyes outside. Old Griffin earned 400 crystals himself and couldn't stop grinning. I paid him 800 for the arrow tower core. Then he gave me advice: upgrade my tower by another core. A level 2 tower holds 4 cores, level 3 holds 5. Things were only going to get more dangerous. He offered to find me another core if I gave him a pink crystal. I thought it over and agreed. FIA showed up dragging a huge bag of fertilizer. We loaded up and headed home. Our little group had grown into a proper caravan. Griffin's 3 archers, the slave trader's guards, a cart full of supplies, and 5 new beastkin walking behind. We reached the shelter by afternoon. Luke waved goodbye. FIA asked where her room was and marched off to inspect the farmland. I turned to my new slaves. They stood together nervously, waiting. Harper held Pello tight, watching me with guarded eyes. I could read her status. She was terrified I'd bought her daughter to hurt her. Some tower masters had that reputation. Under the slave contract, she couldn't fight back. All she could do was beg. I cleared my throat and welcomed them. I told them to call me boss. 3 meals a day, meat at lunch, tents for now until I could build proper housing. Every one of them had, hungry, in their status, so food was the fastest way to settle them down. I sent Aisha to cook a big pot of porridge with extra jerky. The 3 regular slaves were overjoyed just hearing they'd eat. Pello's stomach growled loudly. Harper stayed cautious. I walked up to her and asked her name, pretending I didn't already know. She told me she was a blacksmith. I asked what she could make. Farming tools, weapons, shields, basic armor, if she had a forge. I liked what I heard. I told her that since she had real skills, she'd be in charge of managing the other slaves. She and Pello could stay in the wooden cabin instead of a tent. Then I addressed everyone. I said any slave who showed real ability would get better treatment, and anyone who made a major contribution to the shelter could earn their freedom. I held up the contracts for emphasis. The 3 regular slaves stared blankly. Years of slavery had carved obedience so deep into them that my words sounded like a strange game their master was playing. But Harper understood. Her eyes locked onto mine. I could see the words running through her mind. Freedom. Pello could be free someday. Aisha served everyone holy spring water before dinner. She told them it was a blessing from their master that would free them from the curse of darkness. No more going berserk at night. Harper didn't believe it at first, but she drank it anyway. Black smoke burst out of her body and vanished. The shadow that had hung over her since birth was gone. Her mind felt clearer than ever. Even the knife wound on her leg started healing. She cried and immediately made little Pello drink too. The girl gulped it down and smiled. One by one, The other slaves drank and fell to their knees before me. I told everyone to eat up and not to overthink it. When I checked the stats, I got a surprise. Pello's talent had upgraded from rare level brute strength to epic level giant's power. The same thing that happened to Aisha. But the other 3 slaves didn't change at all. I couldn't figure out the pattern yet. Maybe it was connected to the dark erosion being removed. Either way, good news. Harper's loyalty jumped to 72. Her forging skill was now at 18 out of 20, close to master level. Pello's loyalty hit 60. I told Harper to set up tents near the tower and get everyone washed up at the spring. Then I went inside. FIA came out of her room covered in dust, complaining the cabin was falling apart. I told her to save her opinions and go eat. She yelled something about respecting elders. I reminded her I was the boss and could dock her pay. She shut up fast and stomped off. That night, I stayed awake. The news about the underground city had been bothering me all day. The new slaves pulled their weight immediately. The 2 I'd picked for their super smell and night vision talents made good scouts, watching the perimeter from their tents. Monsters came as usual: wolves, slimes, goblins, bats, scorpion beasts. The 4 arrow towers handled them. Then I spotted something bigger crawling toward us from the distance. FIA shouted from behind me. Magic lizards. 3rd floor underground city creatures. The fortune teller was right. Stronger monsters were already appearing during normal nights. I did the math. I had 1,228 blue crystals. Upgrading the tower to level 3 cost 500. Arrow tower upgrades from level 1 to 2 cost 50 each, and 2 to 3 cost 200 each. If I spent everything, I could get my crystal tower to level 3, upgrade 2 arrow towers to level 3, and bring the other 2 to level 2. After tonight's treasure basin income, I could push a 3rd tower to level 3. Money sitting in my pocket wouldn't save my life. I spent it all. The crystal tower turned level 3. A faint pink glow mixed into the blue light. The warm zone expanded to a 100-meter radius, and it unlocked a new ability. I could now use the tower's energy to slowly move buildings and materials anywhere within its range. For someone with a construction background, that was a dream tool. I could reposition the wonders, transport stone blocks, even help build structures. And I could authorize other people to use it too. The tower could now hold 5 arrow cores, and each tower unlocked a 2nd-tier upgrade with 3 new options. Flame arrows that burn enemies, armor-piercing arrows with double penetration, and stasis arrows that slow targets by half. I planned it out carefully. The 2 rapid-fire towers got stasis upgrades to slow enemies down. The scatter tower would get flame for area burning. The sniper tower got armor-piercing to punch through tough leaders. I could only afford 3 upgrades right now, so I prioritized the sniper and the 2 rapid-fire towers. The scatter tower would have to wait. The medicine water sales still had 3,600 crystals coming in, plus over 100 a night from the treasure basin. The money would come back. What mattered was surviving tonight. No more wasting shots on a giant troll when a shaman was sitting on its shoulder. That problem was solved. Each upgrade cost 200 crystals. For towers nearly drained the pink crystal I'd invested. The leftover energy stayed in the tower as reserves. Running costs were 2 crystals per tower per week, plus 5 for the tower itself. The stored energy would keep everything running for a while. The firepower was incredible. Aisha couldn't stop cheering. Every monster that entered range got shredded. The sniper tower locked onto a magic lizard at over 200 meters and punched straight through its skull. But the thing didn't die. Even with massively boosted damage and penetration, it took 2 shots to kill 1 lizard. That worried me. These were just 3rd-floor creatures. If I hadn't upgraded to level 3 tonight, I might not have survived. For now, watching the tower's work was actually enjoyable instead of terrifying. But I couldn't relax. My shelter was still just getting started. I used the Crystal Tower's new moving ability to rearrange everything. The God of Architecture statue and Horn of Plenty went to the west side. The treasure basin got moved to the front door and covered with a round wooden board like a pot lid. My own people would know what it was, but outsiders wouldn't see glowing golden crystal bowl sitting in the open. FIA wandered over and asked why I had so many strange statues and buildings. I told her they were wonders, symbols of civilization and culture, that we couldn't just focus on survival, but also needed spiritual enrichment. She almost believed me, then squinted suspiciously. I kept a straight face. She reminded me she was only staying 1 month. 2 harvests and she'd leave. I didn't argue. Her goal was advancing to plant science master, and I had knowledge that could help her get there. When the time came, she'd make her own choice. Next morning, Aisha had already collected the crystals from the treasure basin and hidden them in our secret stash. I looked at the remaining wonders on page 2. The guardian statues needed too much time, and I didn't need extra defense right now. The Horn of Submission was interesting. Blow it, and one monster within 5 meters surrenders. No strength limit mentioned. Could it work on a dragon? The 5-meter range was tricky, but I could either capture a beast and drag it close, or place the horn on the front line and wait. 30-day cooldown, so I had to choose carefully. The statue of the hunting goddess was what I wanted most. Every arrow tower could train 1 archery master, and all bow damage inside the shelter would increase by 50%. If I became an archery master, I could finally protect myself outside. I decided to build the Horn of Submission first. 4 workers, 36 hours, doable today. Then start on the hunting goddess statue with whatever time was left. Luke showed up with a strong female camel beast and some feed. My 50 crystal purchase delivered. And of course, milk. I sat down for breakfast. Aisha was making vegetable porridge. FIA stumbled out grumpy with bed hair. Little Pello sat there staring at the food with big round eyes. I poured the milk into 3 cups, only enough for 3. I gave them to Pello, Aisha, and FIA. None for me. Harper came rushing in to apologize for Pello wandering into the cabin. I told her it was fine and that the kids should eat with us from now on. She looked like she wanted to cry. She bowed and left, glancing back at Pello with a look of relief on her face. Maybe life really was getting better. FIA stared at her milk and made a disgusted face. She said milk was for children and that a proper breakfast was beer and a raw egg. I told her she'd change her mind after the diarrhea. She paused and asked if that was why she'd been having stomach problems. Pello gulped down her milk in seconds, tail wagging like a fan, staring at me with sparkling eyes. Aisha tried to push her cup toward me, but I told her to keep it. We'd just get Luke to bring more tomorrow. The 2 hens I bought needed a couple more days before they'd start laying eggs. I reminded FIA to cook them properly. No more raw eggs. Work started at 7. I transmitted the Horn of Submission blueprint to the 4 dog beastkin and sent them to gather stone and build. FIA was out in the fields expanding the farmland and mixing in fertilizer, struggling with a shovel almost as big as she was. Aisha was about to go help with construction, but I stopped her. With the beastkin handling labor now, she had a more important job, learning to operate the Crystal Tower's material moving ability. I taught her the process and she got right to it. I finally had some free time. I settled the new camel beast in a makeshift stable and started thinking about building a forge for Harper. Then a stranger appeared. A human man on a brown war horse, wearing light armor, a sword at his hip, a recurved bow on his back. He stopped just outside my arrow tower range. He said he didn't know me, but he knew my good neighbor. Old Griffin had sold a large batch of healing potions in the city, and this man knew Griffin didn't have the ability to make them. He'd heard my name from Luke and Noah, the 2 brothers who couldn't keep their mouths shut. He looked over my shelter and mocked it. A tiny startup with no walls, wasting time on useless decorations instead of building farms. Then he got to the point. He wanted 100 doses of medicine by tomorrow morning. If I didn't deliver, there would be consequences. I stayed calm and thought it through. Inside my Crystal Tower's range, I was basically untouchable. The arrow towers would destroy anyone who entered. That's why tower masters almost never attacked each other directly. But this man could ambush me whenever I left the shelter. Plenty of people did that kind of thing out here. He'd come to threaten me instead of old Griffin, which meant he was still wary of a bowmaster. Once I finished the hunting goddess statue, my shelter would have 3 archery masters. Add the Horn of Submission and the guardian statues after that. My defenses would be far stronger. I needed time. Every wonder I built made me exponentially more powerful. I kept my voice even and suggested a trade instead of threats. I told him that making an enemy of me would cost him. He laughed and said a level 3 tower with no walls had no right to talk tough. He turned his horse and rode off, warning me to have the goods ready by morning. As he left, I noticed him secretly drop something into the sand. That gave me a bad feeling. The man had real killing intent in his eyes. He wasn't just some bully, he was dangerous. I needed to find out who he was. I'd ask Luke or old Griffin and warn them that the medicine water had attracted unwanted attention. But first, I needed more security. I called for Harper. She came running from the construction site, covered in dust. I asked her what she'd need to set up a forge. She answered without hesitation. A furnace, anvil, and tools, all available in the city. I told her I'd take her shopping soon. I needed farming tools, weapons, bows, and construction materials. Her eyes lit up. She'd thought she'd never touch a forge again. The idea that I was going to let her run her own workshop was almost too much for her to believe. I sent her back to work and wandered over to watch FIA. She was struggling to turn the soil and yelled at me to help. I didn't move. After days of backbreaking construction, I had earned the right to stand around and supervise. I asked her what a near-master plant scientist could actually do. She puffed up with pride. Ordinary experts could identify most crops and herbs and knew how to plant and preserve them. But someone at her level could sense a plant's life force and selectively breed the best specimens across generations. FIA boasted that her crops yielded at least 20% more than normal. But when I dug deeper, I realized she was working purely on instinct and experience, no theory behind it. She could sense which plants were stronger, but she had no idea why. I asked her if she'd ever noticed patterns when crossbreeding plants. She said, of course, hybridization experiments were a basic requirement for becoming a master. She had detailed records in her notebook. I told her to bring it over. I was going to teach her something called the hypothetical deductive method. She scoffed at the idea of me teaching a plant science expert. Then Aisha came running over the moment she heard the word lesson and scolded FIA for disrespecting a legendary architect. Using FIA's own experimental data, I walked them through basic statistics and Mendel's principles of inheritance. Aisha understood it in one pass. She grasped the theory, extended it, and started making connections on her own. FIA's brain overloaded. She sat there scratching her head while I finished and got up to take a break. She panicked. She could feel she was on the edge of a breakthrough. The insight she needed to become a plant science master was right there, just out of reach. She chased after Aisha, trying to bribe her with promises of honey fruit wine and brewing recipes. Aisha politely deflected everything, saying the knowledge belonged to the boss and she couldn't share without permission. FIA finally came begging to me directly. Her loyalty had climbed to 76. I told Aisha to go ahead and teach her. FIA dropped to the ground grinning like a fool and promised to brew me beer when she figured out how. Her loyalty jumped to 82. Above 80 meant I didn't have to worry about betrayal anymore, though keeping her at the shelter long-term would still take more effort. I went inside and started drawing blueprints. As a former architect, planning a layout was easy. I designed a 2-story stone castle, ground floor with a reception hall, dining room, kitchen, servant quarters, and washroom. Second floor with over 10 bedrooms and a balcony circling the whole building for a full view of the shelter. The outer walls would be half a meter thick. I planned pipes to bring holy spring water inside for daily use, a drainage system, and even flush toilets. Outside the castle, I mapped out positions for a blacksmith shop, stable, expanded farmland, and future wonder locations. The statue-type wonders would go on the perimeter. They were nearly indestructible once built and could serve as barriers against attacks. At noon, Harper brought the beastkin workers back. Aisha had cooked vegetable porridge with generous chunks of dried meat for everyone. The slaves finally believed yesterday's promise was real. Their faces lit up with gratitude. The porridge was made with holy spring water, so it restored energy too. After eating, they went straight back to work without needing rest. FIA stumbled out still processing everything Aisha had taught her. She asked where I was. Aisha said I was in the kitchen making something special. I stir-fried meat and vegetables with animal fat and spices. Nothing fancy, but after days of plain bread and porridge, it tasted incredible. I set the plate on the table. Pello's nose twitched non-stop, and her tail was going wild. FIA shoved a piece of meat in her mouth and declared it as good as a big city tavern. If only we had alcohol. Aisha waited for me to sit down before eating. I pulled out chopsticks I'd carved myself and dug in. Lunch was a hit. Aisha and Pello couldn't stop eating. Pello looked about 6 or 7 years old, but put away 2 bowls of soup and kept going. Her status still didn't show full. It just kept complaining about wanting beer. In the afternoon, I showed Aisha my castle blueprint. She stared at it with glowing eyes and said it was 100 times prettier than any noble's house in the city. I asked how long a professional team would take to build it. She said 3 or 4 months with an expert leading, but only 1 month with a master. I asked what made architecture masters so special. She explained it was the most powerful profession on the wasteland. Every master gains a special trait. The most common one lets them rapidly fuse materials together into solid structures. Combined with a crystal tower, the speed doubles. The strongest masters could raise a fortress from flat ground in an instant. Then she paused, confused. Why was a legendary architect asking her these basic questions? She decided I must be testing her. I handed her the blueprint and told her to build it when she became an architecture master. This would be our home. She held the papers like they were sacred treasures. Her eyes got misty when I said, our home. I wasn't being sentimental. I just didn't want to do the work myself. Her skill progress was close to mine anyway. Once she hit master, I could relax. I told her to keep participating in wonder construction, but as a supervisor, not a laborer. Watching from the side and directing the workers. Just like a foreman, my old job before I came to this world. I took a nap in my chair. By late afternoon, the 4 beastkin finished the Horn of Submission after 8+ hours of work. I activated the guide, and the human-sized horn expanded in a flash of golden light. I placed it at the edge of the shelter, right on the front line. Tonight I'd test it, ideally on something powerful. A magic lizard would be perfect, 5 or 6 meters long. It could pull a cart to the city or haul materials around the construction site. My architecture skill hit 16 out of 20. Aisha reached 15. One more wonder, and we'd both be at the threshold for master rank. I checked the beastkin workers' stats. None of them gained architecture skills from building. They didn't have the foundation. Aisha had started as an apprentice with basic knowledge and had legendary talent. I had a lifetime of construction experience from my old world. The beastkin just became experienced laborers, skilled with their hands, but not progressing toward a real profession. I briefly considered teaching them, then remembered FIA's blank face during my Mendel lesson. I dropped the idea. Aisha was special. Not everyone could absorb knowledge that fast. I announced the next project, the statue of the hunting goddess. The one I'd been dying to build. Once finished, each arrow tower could train 1 archery master, and all bow and tower damage inside the shelter would jump 50%. I would finally be able to protect myself. 144 hours total. For workers, 36 hours each. At least 3 days. Harper rallied the beastkin. They said they didn't need rest. The holy spring water kept them going. They started immediately. I walked back to find old Griffin approaching with someone new. His eldest son, Jet Griffin. I'd met Noah and Luke, but never the firstborn. I scanned him. Archery expert, same as his brothers. Only old Griffin himself was an archery master. Looking at them, I thought about the hunting goddess statue nearing completion and made a mental note. I should ask old Griffin for a good bow. Old Griffin rode over shouting my name. He spotted the Horn of Submission right away, and I saw surprise flash across his face, but he covered it quickly. He complimented my buildings and called me an excellent architect. I waved it off. He brought good news. The extra arrow tower core I'd ordered was ready, and he handed over 1,200 blue crystals from the medicine water sales. He said the word had spread through the city and demand was growing. We might need another supply run soon. He also mentioned his back pain of 10 years had completely disappeared after drinking the water. He offered to take me to the city's flower district to celebrate. I coughed and changed the subject. I told him about the armed rider who'd threatened me that morning. Old Griffin's face darkened. He apologized. His sons must have mentioned my name and someone overheard. His eldest son Jed explained the situation. The northern regions had it worse than us. Many shelters and even some cities had fallen to the monsters. Displaced soldiers and refugees drifted south. Some found crystal towers and set up camp, surviving through raiding and extortion. A group of these rogue soldiers had settled in the Rocky Mountains about 15 kilometers north. They'd tried threatening the Griffin family before, but backed off when they realized every Griffin was a skilled archer. That matched the rider's profile perfectly. Military bearing, killing intent in his eyes. What worried me more was what Jet said about fallen cities. I'd seen the city walls, massive, thick, built to withstand something terrible. The city's army was well equipped with black iron armor, expert-level archers everywhere, even a fortune teller. If forces like that couldn't survive the monsters and ended up as bandits, the threat from underground was far worse than I'd imagined. Old Griffin warned me to be careful. I nodded and asked if they had any spare bows. Jet laughed and said archery took years of training. A beginner's arrows couldn't even scratch a goblin, let alone pierce a magic lizard's scales. Old Griffin was kinder about it. He said wanting self-defense was smart, but good bows required rare materials they didn't have. He could give me an ordinary bow, about 80 pounds. I could tell he also doubted I could even draw it properly. I didn't argue. I couldn't explain the hunting goddess statue yet. He said it was a gift between friends and would have Luke deliver it. I asked what special ability a master archer gets. Old Griffin laughed proudly. Every master gains a unique power. His was called Lightning Bow. His arrows carried electricity that could paralyze a whole group of enemies in one shot. After they left, I looked at my skinny arms and thought about the problem. An 80-pound bow could barely hurt a magic wolf. But even when I became an archery master through the statue, I'd still need actual muscle to draw a strong bow. Looking at Griffin's arms, thicker than my legs, and the calluses on his fingers, I realized I probably needed to start working out instead of lounging in my chair all day. That evening, everyone gathered by the Crystal Tower. I announced my plan to tame a monster tonight using the Horn of Submission. Fia scoffed. She asked if I thought monsters would become loyal just like the beastkin after drinking holy water. Aisha and Harper glared at her until she shrank back. I patted the horn and explained. One blast within 5 meters would make a monster submit. Only one, so I had to choose carefully. Aisha figured it out immediately. She'd already noticed the pattern. Every wonder had a powerful effect. The holy spring healed. The treasure basin made money. The god of architecture sped up building. The horn of plenty boosted crops. A horn that tames monsters fit perfectly. She begged to do it herself, saying it was too dangerous. I told her no. I needed to control the arrow towers to let exactly one monster through, and I needed her operating the crystal tower to move stone slabs into position as barriers if something went wrong. She tried to argue. I told her I'd run if things got bad. That was the truth. The risk was real, but it was manageable, and the reward was enormous. Night fell, and the arrow towers went to work. I waited for a magic lizard to show up. That was my taming target. The dog beastkin with night vision watched the horizon for me. A magic lizard finally appeared. But before I could act, the ground started shaking. Harper's ears twitched. She said something was underground. Fia grabbed my arm, trembling. Then she remembered what it was, a ground dragon. A Tier 3 monster that normally lives deep underground near mineral veins. It should never appear near a surface shelter. Fia said Tier 3 beasts could smash through city walls. A full squad of knights couldn't take one down. Everyone was terrified. Aisha stepped forward and grabbed my arm. I told them not to worry. I was nervous too, but mostly excited. I had the Horn of Submission right next to me. If the dragon got within 5 meters, I could tame it. A Tier 3 monster as my servant, that would change everything. The ground bulged, and the creature burst partway out of the earth. Its head was covered in armored scales, eyes glowing with cold metallic light, 2 small spiral horns on top. It was at least the size of a truck, twice as big as a magic lizard. It sniffed the air, then dug something out of the sand, a glowing blue crystal fragment. It let out what sounded like a mournful cry. I narrowed my eyes. That crystal was exactly where the armed rider had stopped earlier today. This was no coincidence. He must have planted it to lure the ground dragon here. He was using the creature as a threat, showing me he could send it to destroy my shelter anytime he wanted. The dragon glanced at us, red fury burning in its eyes. For a moment, I thought it would charge. Then it suddenly jerked its head as if sensing something else, dove back underground, and vanished. I was frustrated. So close. The rider must have lured it away with another crystal fragment somewhere else. He wasn't trying to destroy me yet, just applying pressure. Most shelter owners would have caved after seeing a Tier 3 monster at their doorstep. What he didn't know was that I actually wanted him to send it again. A Tier 3 beast that could burrow underground and had real combat power? That was exactly what I wanted to tame. Now that I knew how they were controlling it, catching the dragon was just a matter of time. I told everyone not to worry. If it came back, we'd tame it. Fia told me to stop bragging and said it was only the goddess of plenty's blessing that saved us. She turned to the Horn of Plenty statue and started praying. Aisha just smiled up at me and said she knew we'd be fine all along. I decided to save the Horn of Submission for the ground dragon. No point wasting it on a lesser beast. I posted the slaves on rotating night watch and went to bed. Later that night, I heard knocking from down the hall. FIA had shown up at Aisha's door clutching her blanket, claiming she was worried that Aisha might be too scared to sleep alone and had come to keep her company. That night, FIA showed up at Aisha's door with her blanket, pretending she was worried about Aisha being scared. Aisha saw right through it and made her admit she was the one who was afraid. She let her in. I could hear everything through the thin walls. Another reason to build that new castle soon. I stayed up planning. I sketched city wall designs based on medieval fortifications, simple and strong. And I made a plan for tomorrow. The rider would come back expecting me to surrender after seeing the ground dragon. Instead, I was going to make him angry enough to send it again. Morning came. Luke delivered 4 servings of milk and a brand new hardwood longbow with a bag of broadhead arrows designed for monsters. Harper told me the bow itself was simple to make, but quality arrowheads required a proper forge. Training an apprentice blacksmith to make good ones would take at least 2 weeks. After breakfast, everyone got to work. Harper's loyalty had quietly climbed to 90. Aisha was at 95. FIA hovered around 85, busy in the fields running experiments based on the genetics theory Aisha had taught her. I did 2 sets of morning exercises by the holy spring and went back to my blueprints. Then the rider appeared. He smirked and asked if I'd had a nice night. I put on a perfect act, just the right amount of shock and anger. I accused him of controlling the dragon. He laughed and told me to hand over the medicine. I refused. I told him I didn't believe he could actually control a Tier 3 beast and called it a bluff. Then I turned my back on him. He was stunned, then furious. He screamed that tonight I'd be eaten alive along with my filthy beastkin. I threw one more insult as he rode off, told him not to hide in his cave like a rat tonight, and to bring his dragon daddy if he had the guts. He nearly drew his bow, but he was too far from me and too close to my arrow towers. He rode away shaking with rage. I watched him secretly. Just before he disappeared over the horizon, he casually tossed 2 crystal fragments into the sand. I sent Harper to find them. Her nose led her right to them. 2 translucent stones that looked like crystals filled with starlight. Aisha recognized them. When she worked in the mines, they once dug up something similar. The mine boss panicked and made them bury it, then abandoned the entire shaft. FIA took one look and said they weren't crystals. They were ground dragon droppings. I dropped both stones immediately. She picked them up without flinching and explained. These weren't regular waste. They were defensive mineral deposits that ground dragons excrete after laying eggs to protect their nests. Rich in iron ore, which meant this dragon lived near an iron deposit. Apparently, some nobles ground these stones into powder and drank them in water. Aisha covered her mouth in horror. FIA sighed and said it technically wasn't excrement. Then she confirmed my theory. The riders group must have raided the dragon's nest, possibly stolen its eggs. The dragon was following these stones trying to find the ones who destroyed its home. Now I had a plan. Tonight I'd use these stones to lure the dragon right to the Horn of Submission. The hunting goddess statue was on its 2nd day of construction. 2 more days and it would be done, making me an archery master by tomorrow night. I encouraged the beastkin workers and started my daily exercise routine. FI yelled at me to come help with farming instead. I explained that since she was half my height, she only needed to lift things half as far, making her inherently more efficient than me. Therefore, me not doing farm work was actually saving labor costs. She stared at me in complete confusion. I spent the afternoon preparing. The wonders were indestructible, so I moved the statue-shaped ones to the outer edge of the shelter as a defensive line. The Horn of Submission's base was solid stone. If I stood on it, the ground dragon couldn't attack me from below. I rehearsed the plan in my head. 5 meters was a generous range. If the dragon surfaced and lunged at me, I'd run circles around the horn like an ancient king dodging an assassin around a pillar. At lunch, Harper examined my new bow and confirmed what I already knew. Decent materials, but too weak to pierce anything above a Tier 1 monster. She glanced at my skinny arms and wisely said nothing more. She promised to make me a stronger bow once I built up my strength and she had a proper forge. Night came. I stood alone on top of the horn's base, one hand on the mouthpiece. 2 red crystal stones sat at the top of the statue, glowing like drops of blood trapped in amber. The regular monsters came first. The upgraded towers shredded them effortlessly. Half an hour passed. Then the ground trembled. Aisha gripped a bucket of holy spring water. ready to cleanse the dragon's berserk curse after capture. FIA hid behind her, muttering that this was insane. Harper crouched low, shaking but ready to charge in if things went wrong. I watched the yellow line in the dirt racing toward me. 50 meters. 30. 20. I ordered the towers not to fire at the dragon's position. At 7 or 8 meters, it exploded out of the ground, momentum carrying it straight at me. I was already blowing the horn. A deep, ancient sound rang across the wasteland. Everyone felt it in their bones. A call from a time when civilization and wilderness were still one. The beastkin felt it strongest. The dragon slammed into the statue. I'd already jumped behind it. Smart move. Standing still would have gotten me crushed. Everyone rushed forward screaming my name. I poked my head out from behind the statue and grinned. The 10-meter dragon lay draped over the horn's base, dazed from the impact. Something was happening inside its mind. An overwhelming urge to submit, impossible to resist. Slowly, it lowered its massive head. I walked up and patted it. Good girl. Aisha splashed the holy spring water over the dragon. The black fog of dark erosion hissed away. She beamed at me with pure admiration. FIA couldn't close her mouth. She sputtered that kingdoms had spent centuries trying to tame a few magic wolves, and I'd just done it with one blow of a horn. I checked the dragon's stats. Female. Loyalty, 100. Talent. Mineral sensing, rare level. Status showed confusion, grief over lost offspring, and total loyalty. She could partially understand my words. I told everyone to suggest a name. FIA jumped in eagerly. She told us about an ancient dragon sealed in a stone valley, a 1,000-year-old creature called Duomoj that could swallow the sun and moon. So she wanted to name our dragon Duo. The vote was 6-1 against her. We named her Moj. I circled Moj twice, more pleased with every step. 10 meters long, armored in scales, capable of burrowing underground at high speed. A Tier 3 monster, now mine. FIA pointed out that ground dragons live near mineral veins and need, or to eat. That meant there was an iron deposit nearby, probably the same one where the rogue soldiers had found Moj's nest and stolen her eggs, using the eggshell crystals to weaponize her against neighboring shelters. Harper's eyes lit up. If we could secure that iron mine, she could forge all the tools, weapons, and armor we'd ever need. I looked at Moj like she was the most precious thing in the world. I told her to rest underground for now. Tomorrow we'd strike back at the people who destroyed her nest. Maybe even get revenge for her lost eggs. Her status still showed grief for lost children. She nodded slightly, understanding enough of what I said. Then her enormous body slid backward and disappeared into the earth. The beastkin worked through the night without complaint. No other threats appeared. The ground dragon must have been the enemy's only card. By morning, the workers were already at the construction site. They'd been pushing 16-hour days instead of the 12 I planned. The hunting goddess statue was nearly done. They'd finish before noon instead of tomorrow. I told them I'd add meat to lunch. Harper said they were grateful enough already. The food, the rest breaks, the holy spring water. I couldn't argue with people who wanted to work harder, so I just made a note to feed them better. Then the rider showed up again. This time he brought 2 others on war horses. When they saw my shelter still standing, all 3 froze. The leader was called Lucas. He had cold, vulture-like eyes. The rider who'd been threatening me was named Kieran. Lucas demanded to know why the ground dragon hadn't destroyed my shelter. Kieran checked the spot where he'd buried the crystals. Gone. They argued. Kieran admitted he'd only used the dragon as a scare tactic the first night, and that must have tipped me off. Lucas called him an idiot. I stood at my shelter's edge and waved at them, asked if they wanted to come in for a chat. Kieran lost his temper and screamed threats. Lucas shut him up and spoke calmly. He told me I couldn't hide inside forever, and the moment I stepped out, I was dead. I smiled and told him I was actually planning to visit the city today to sell another batch of medicine. Told him to come and try to stop me, and to bring more people. They rode off furious. I stretched and went back inside. The trap was set. When the ground dragon killed them, I'd keep one alive to find out where the iron mine was. Luke came with the milk. I gave him 20 crystals and asked for 2 heavier longbows, 120 pounds each, and 100 arrows. He came back quickly and rode off happy to spend his tip money at the city. By 10 in the morning, the hunting goddess statue was complete. I activated the guide. The sculpture erupted with golden light and grew into the tallest structure in the shelter, 12 or 13 meters high. Then I felt it. Aisha felt it too. We both crossed the threshold at the same time. We were architecture masters. Aisha stared at her hands in disbelief. Tears gathered in her eyes. She thanked me, and I told her she earned it. I tested my new master ability, shaping. I focused on a stone on the ground, and it broke apart and reassembled into a rough statue. It drained my energy fast, like sprinting 50 meters, but it worked. Aisha's ability was transport. She could rapidly extract and move underground materials, perfect when combined with the crystal tower. FIA walked over and overheard us. When she realized Aisha had become an architecture master, the hardest profession to master, she completely broke down. She'd traveled half the continent and cataloged over 5,000 plants and still hadn't reached plant science master. She stood there with tears streaming down her face, wailing at the goddess of plenty about the unfairness of it all. Aisha tried to comfort her by saying she'd reach master level 2 if she stayed with us. I didn't seem to hear. Then came the real prize. I touched the hunting goddess statue and felt 5 streams of power inside, one for each arrow tower. I pulled one into myself. Memories flooded my brain. Millions of repetitions of drawing a bow, aiming, releasing. Thousands of hours of training compressed into 2 minutes of raw knowledge transfer. When I opened my eyes, I checked my stats. Architecture master, bow master, civil engineering expert. I was finally dangerous on my own. I picked up the longbow and drew an arrow. The moment my fingers touched the string, countless memories of shooting flooded into my hands. I aimed at a rock wall 100 meters away and released. The arrow flew like a blur. Then I felt it, my master ability. Time slowed to a crawl. My vision merged with the arrow itself. I was the arrow. I could steer it mid-flight. Up, down, left. I could even make it accelerate. I guided it past its normal 90-meter range and drove it into a dead tree on the hillside. Harper gasped. Aisha asked when I'd learned to shoot. Just recently, I couldn't hit a target at 20 meters. I smiled and asked if she wanted to learn too. Her eyes went wide. I transferred a second stream of power from the hunting goddess statue into her, then did the same for Harper. 3 archery masters from one wonder. Harper opened her eyes first. She grabbed a bow, drew, and fired. The arrow punched into a boulder 100 meters away and cracked it like a spider web. Her master ability was armor-piercing. She could shoot through stone and heavy armor. Aisha's ability was speed-related. She drew and fired so fast it was almost a blur, over 10 arrows in seconds. Every one landed in a head-sized circle on the distant hillside. Some arrows split the ones already stuck there. With these 2, I felt genuinely safe for the first time. FIA stood there watching all of us, completely lost. She'd watched 3 people close their eyes for a few minutes and become master archers. She whined about wanting to become a master too. I knew she was close. Her plant science was at 19 out of 20. Once this batch of crops grew and proved the genetics theory I'd taught her, she'd cross the line. I opened the Wonder Construction Guide to start the Guardian statues. Then I noticed something. Page 3 had unlocked. Meanwhile, things were happening at the Griffin shelter that I'd only learn about later. Old Griffin gathered his sons after Luke returned from delivering the bows. Luke mentioned my newest statue, a giant sculpture of a woman holding a bow. Old Griffin found it strange that a man who spent his days building statues had survived 2 beast waves and possessed miracle medicine. Noah suggested I might be the heir of a powerful city-state or kingdom, maybe even a noble's secret child. That would explain my resources and how I'd upgraded my shelter so quickly even before selling the holy water. Jet agreed. The night of the beast wave, they'd all assumed I was dead. No one with a level 1 tower should have survived. Old Griffin told his sons to remember one thing: help me whenever they could. The old man looked tired as he spoke. He said the wasteland was getting more dangerous every day. His level 3 tower and wooden walls wouldn't hold forever. Upgrading to level 4 would cost 5 pink crystals, their entire savings. And what about after that? He had a feeling I would be their backup plan. My identity was mysterious, my abilities impossible to understand, and I always seemed to have everything under control. Then he told Luke to bring me a dairy cow with tomorrow's milk delivery. Noah protested. They only had 3 cows and couldn't buy more. Old Griffin told him to just do it. I opened the Wonder Construction Guide and page 3 was waiting for me. For new wonders. The blessed beehive, honey that strengthens the body, plus 10 housing slots. The Fallen Star Forge, doubles smelting speed with a chance to improve equipment quality. The Polar Frost Nest, a freezer vault that preserves food for ages. And the Holy Shield, doubles wall durability and adds self-repair. Build times had jumped from hours to days now, and each required 5 to 10 workers. I need more people soon. I ranked them in my head. The beehive came first: food, housing, and physical enhancement. My weak body needed that boost the most. The forge second, to support Harper's blacksmithing once we secured iron. The frost nest could wait since winter itself would keep food cold. The Holy Shield needed walls first. But before any of those, I still had the guardian statues from page 2, 4 stone guardians that patrol the shelter each night. 3 days of work for 4 people. I activated the blueprint and sent the beastkin to start building. Then I crouched down and called Moj out of the ground. Her massive head broke through the surface. I asked if she was ready for revenge. She roared. She understood enough to know who had destroyed her eggs. I mounted the camel beast and brought Aisha and Harper. 3 archery masters riding out to fight. FIA watched us leave, clutching little Pello, worried. She said we could just hide in the shelter forever. The crops were growing insanely fast, ready to harvest in 3 days. I told her not to underestimate 3 master archers. She repeated the word, master, to herself and seemed to relax. She waved goodbye. After we left, something clicked in her brain. She'd been turning over the genetics data, thinking about Pello's tail and inherited traits. The theory suddenly made sense at a deep level. She became a plant science master. I'd already picked our battleground, an open plain on the road to the city with a red rock formation in the middle. Perfect cover for 3 archers, with a tier 3 ground dragon hiding underground nearby. If I were the enemy, I'd despair. We split 100 arrows between us and waited. They came fast. Over 20 cavalry, armored horses, lances and swords, a few with bows. I'd noticed someone tailing us from a distance. They'd taken the bait completely. Kieran was in front, bow already drawn, screaming that I'd never make it home. Lucas ordered them to kill us and seize my shelter. Kieran fired first, but Harper was faster. Her arrow screamed through the air with a sound like a shrieking ghost. It intercepted Kieran's arrow mid-flight and kept going. Kieran threw himself off his horse just in time. The man behind him took the arrow through the throat. Lucas shouted for shields. He cursed, 2 archery masters in this remote wasteland. He ordered a cavalry charge to close the distance before we could pick them off. They were well-trained soldiers, forming up instantly. I took a deep breath and drew my bow. When Lucas saw 3 of us with bows drawn, real fear crossed his face. 3 archery masters. He'd walked into a nightmare. He raised his shield and swerved his horse. My arrow curved in the air like a living thing, tracking him, adjusting its path no matter which way he turned. He screamed. The fight was over in moments. It wasn't even a battle, it was a slaughter. Lucas threw himself off his horse and used it as a shield, but I curved my arrow around the animal and drove it into the man standing next to him. Harper's arrows punched through anything in their path. Aisha became a blur, firing so fast her body almost disappeared. Every arrow found its target like a guided missile. The front line collapsed instantly. The archers in the back died before they could loose a second shot. Lucas screamed for retreat. Then Moj burst out of the ground behind him. He knew that sound. He'd used the ground dragon against others before. When he turned around, all he saw was an open mouth full of teeth. I shouted at Moj not to eat him. She swatted him with a claw the size of a man. He flew like a rag doll. I picked off the runners with guided arrows. 3 made it past my range. I used my architecture master ability to raise stone spikes from the ground in their path. Their horses crashed. I sent Moj to finish them. 20-some soldiers. All dead except 1. I walked up to Kieran, the one who'd started all this. He was shaking on the ground, staring at me like I was a demon wearing human skin. He couldn't understand how we had 3 archery masters and a tamed ground dragon. He begged for his life and offered information. He said there were people behind them, the pharmacist guild in the city. After the beast waves spread plague, the pharmacist told these soldiers they had no medicine yet. But when my holy water appeared on the market, the pharmacist hired them to threaten me, steal my product, and even kill everyone in my shelter. They wanted their monopoly back. Old Griffin had warned me about the pharmacists. We'd sold through shops specifically to avoid their attention. It wasn't enough. Aisha was furious. She hissed like an angry bird and swore we'd make them pay. I patted her head and told her I had plenty of ways to deal with them. Kieran confirmed that only he and Lucas knew about my connection to the medicine. The rest of the soldiers were all here, and they were all dead now. Good. No information leak. Then I asked about the iron mine. Kieran spilled everything. They'd found a hidden crystal tower inside a red rock mountain to the north, with a massive mining pit dug by the ground dragon. Below it was a large iron deposit. Lucas had destroyed the dragon's nest and stolen her eggs, using the eggshell crystals to terrorize neighboring shelters. Harper rounded up 8 warhorses and collected all the dropped weapons. She brought me a magnificent red stallion, tall, strong, blood-colored mane like a lion's. Kieran immediately started flattering me, saying the horse had belonged to their former knight commander and was destined for a great leader like me. I rolled my eyes. The kid had a real talent for bootlicking. Harper tied him up and threw him on the camel beast. When he complained, she whipped him once and he went quiet. We didn't bother going home first. We rode straight north with the captured horses. Half an hour later, we reached a cluster of rocky hills, the soldiers' hideout. Kieran pointed inside. It was well hidden. Without knowing exactly where to look, nobody would find this place. We moved carefully into the rocky hills with bows drawn. Harper took point, scanning everything. Kieran said almost everyone had gone out to attack us. Harper whipped him when he tried to downplay it, and Aisha confirmed she could hear people inside. He quickly admitted they were captured miners forced to work the iron deposit. The hideout was impressive. Natural rock walls on all sides, with only a few narrow passages that arrow towers could easily block. Nearly impossible to find from outside. Harper called it an excellent settlement. I'd already made up my mind. This place was mine. The Fallen Star Forge from page 3 needed to be built near a mine. This was perfect. Most shelter owners wouldn't bother claiming a second crystal tower. Double the costs, double the maintenance, and you'd need people to guard it. Usually they'd just grab the arrow cores and sell the tower back to the city. But I wasn't most people. With the treasure basin and holy water income, crystals weren't my problem. Speed of development was. A second tower sitting on top of an iron mine would accelerate everything. A boy appeared between the rocks. Aisha put an arrow an inch from his eye before he could blink. He dropped to the ground begging. He was a slave. His contract had just dissolved, which meant his masters were dead. He'd come out to check. I told him to take me to the others. He obeyed instantly, forgetting he was technically free now. Moj came lumbering in from the side. The boy nearly fainted. I patted the dragon's head and she made a contented sound. The boy stared and dropped to his knees again. Inside the mine, 17 people huddled together, ragged, starving former slaves. Every single one fell to their knees when they saw the ground dragon beside me. I gave them 2 choices. Leave on light day and go wherever they wanted. Or sign new slave contracts with me, get fed tonight, hot porridge with meat, and have proper shelter built for them. I needed workers. Buying slaves cost money, and these people were already here. I hated the slave system, but work contracts could be broken. With strangers I couldn't watch closely, especially ones I planned to leave here mining. Slave contracts under divine witness were the only safe option. Every single person chose to stay. No hesitation. Except one. A man stepped forward and bowed. His name was Tony. He said he was a merchant from the city whose caravan had been hijacked months ago. He had a wife and a 2-year-old son waiting for him. He begged me to help him get home. A merchant who ran slave caravans wasn't small time. He'd need mercenary guards, wagons, connections, and serious capital. Someone useful. I told him he could come with me to the city tomorrow. I checked his stats. Tony Ward. Rare talent. Good luck. Profession. Senior merchant. Level 7 out of 20. But his status showed an active curse called bad luck streak, along with hunger, pain, and gratitude. Good luck is a talent, but cursed with bad luck? Getting kidnapped and forced into mine labor for 6 months while your family worried. That was his good luck being canceled out. This was only the second abnormal status I'd seen besides dark erosion. Maybe the holy spring water could clear it. I wondered where the curse came from. Harper found a forging setup inside the hideout. A crude furnace, anvil, bellows, and hammers. The weapons the soldiers had tried to make were terrible, all crooked swords and bent spears. But the equipment itself could be repaired. Harper's tail was wagging when I told her she'd get to run a real forge. I also mentioned I'd give her blueprints for a new furnace. She nearly exploded with excitement. She knew everything I built turned into something extraordinary. I found the crystal tower hidden inside a cave halfway up the rock wall. Incredibly well concealed. It had no owner, so I placed my hand on it and claimed it. Blue light flashed. I now had 2 shelters, my main one and this hidden mountain base with its iron mine and 2 arrow towers. I told Kieran his options: sign a slave contract and mine, or die like his friends. He closed his eyes in misery and agreed. A boy among the rescued miners caught my attention. He had a rare talent called killing intent detection. I'd bring him to the main shelter later to develop that. We rode back in under 30 minutes. FIA was standing at the entrance like a statue, waiting for us. She was beaming. She'd become a plant science master. I checked her stats. Sure enough, plant science master, level 1 out of 50. Her status read pure joy. She said she'd be the first halfling plant master in her family's entire history. I asked about her master ability. She could now accelerate plant growth and shorten harvest cycles. Even better, crops she grew with her ability would temporarily boost the eater's strength. She handed me a black bean. I ate it and felt heat spread through my body. My muscles tightened. I picked up the longbow and drew it to full with ease. The effect lasted about 30 minutes with no side effects. I immediately thought of dozens of uses, feeding these to workers during construction, to fighters before battle. Then I looked at the beans more closely. They seemed familiar. I asked what they were. FIA said she'd collected them at an oasis. The locals ground them into powder and drank them in hot water. Coffee beans. I was going to have coffee again. I loaded up food and holy water and made another trip to the mountain shelter to feed everyone. Then I came home and planned tomorrow. I'd leave the miners at the mountain base and buy about 15 more slaves at the city. With enough workers, I could run 3 wonders simultaneously. Housing. Aisha and I were both architecture masters now. Throwing together small houses for slaves would take us no time at all. I went to sleep in a great mood. Aisha woke me for breakfast. I joked that someday I wanted her to wake me up wearing the maid outfit. She turned bright red. FIA poked her head in asking what a maid outfit was. I told her people of this era couldn't appreciate my taste. Then I saw Luke coming, leading a dairy cow. Black and white, unmistakable. His father was sending it as a gift, thanking me for the crystal income from our medicine partnership. I accepted without hesitation. Old Griffin was investing in me. The old fox had recognized my potential. Luke also said his father offered to let me use the Griffin name if those soldiers ever threatened me again. I told him that problem was already taken care of. Luke asked if I wanted to join his father and brothers on a trip to the city today. Of course I did. I took Aisha, Harper, and the merchant Tony with me to the city. When old Griffin arrived to escort us, he immediately noticed the war horses in my stable. His eyes went wide. I told him straight. Those soldiers were all dead, and the Pharmacist Guild was behind everything. He swallowed hard. His son Noah couldn't believe it either. A trained military unit, wiped out. Old Griffin didn't ask how. I could tell he was running wild theories in his head. Maybe I was some city lord's secret son with hidden forces at my command. Whatever he imagined, it made him cling tighter to our partnership. Good. At the city, I gave Harper 100 crystals to buy forge equipment. Tony thanked me a dozen times and ran home to his wife and child. Old Griffin went to collect the remaining medicine water payments and investigate the pharmacists. I headed outside the walls with Aisha to find the slave trader Tiga. I wanted more beastkin. Their stamina was unmatched, especially after drinking holy water. They worked like machines that never stopped. Buying them also meant I could cure their dark erosion and spare them from the cages. Tiga was thrilled to see me. Beastkin were his hardest stock to sell. Then Aisha froze. She sprinted to one of the cages, calling out a name. Sylvia, a sparrow beastkin, covered in wounds, barely alive. They knew each other. Sylvia was like an older sister to Aisha from before the disaster. Sylvia told us that after their settlement was destroyed 3 years ago, she drifted to another beastkin tribe. But the recent double beast wave wiped that out too. She'd lost control and gone berserk during the attack. Aisha asked about her parents. Sylvia shook her head. She hadn't found them. But she'd heard a rumor. A beastkin settlement had formed somewhere to the north, gathering survivors of all kinds, including sparrow beastkin. They'd apparently found a way to control the berserking. I signaled Tiga to let Sylvia out. I told him to destroy her slave contract entirely, no new one. She'd be free. He hesitated, reminding me she was still a beastkin. I told him to just do it. While the two girls talked, I browsed the rest of the stock. About 30 beastkin available. Too many for my shelter right now, and feeding them at the mine would be a problem. I picked 15, 5 with rare talents like mining expert, swift speed, animal affinity, vigilance, and deft hands, plus 10 solid workers. No epic talents in the bunch. Average price was about 15 crystals each. I spent most of my treasure basin savings. But old Griffin would be bringing back 3,600 crystals from the medicine sales soon. Tiga threw in Sylvia for free, smart man, keeping his best customer happy. I asked him about beastkin settlements. He confirmed what Sylvia said. A growing beastkin community had formed in the north, and they'd found some way to suppress the berserking. They were hostile to outsiders, especially slave traders. They'd been raiding caravans and killing the merchants. He warned me not to go near them. I nodded and went back to find Aisha looking sad. She thanked me quietly for freeing Sylvia. The thin woman bowed deeply. I told Aisha not to worry about it. Just an employee benefit. I didn't tell Aisha about the beastkin settlement yet. The situation sounded complicated. I'd gather more information first and find out if any of her family was there. I told Aisha to give Sylvia some holy water and get her new clothes. Meanwhile, I checked Sylvia's stats and nearly dropped my jaw. Epic level talent, Shadow Affinity. Profession, Thief Expert, level 2 out of 20. In this world, thief didn't just mean stealing. It covered trap building, scouting, assassination, and intelligence gathering. An expert-level thief could slip into any building undetected. And Shadow Affinity meant she might unlock shadow magic if she ever reached master rank. Magic was extremely rare here. You could spend years studying in a magic tower, or get lucky and receive an enchantment ability when you became a master in your profession, like old Griffin's lightning arrows. The third option was buying scrolls from master mages, which were incredibly expensive. But people with elemental affinity talents had a much higher chance of gaining magical abilities at master level. I've been hoping to find someone like this for a while. I bought 15 more beastkin slaves, 5 with rare talents like mining expert, swift speed, animal affinity, vigilance, and deft hands, and 10 solid workers. Tiga threw in Sylvia for free. I told him to destroy her slave contract entirely. She'd be a free employee, not a slave. He was surprised but did it. Next I bought lumber, 20 palm logs and 5 redwood logs, and hired an expert-level carpenter and his apprentices to come to my shelter. Wood was scarce on the wasteland. Pure stone buildings were bad for insulation and ventilation. I needed both materials. I realized that now that Aisha and I were architecture masters, we could do the work of 10 people ourselves. Our job should be building the things regular workers couldn't: houses, walls, specialty structures, while the slaves handled wonder construction using the guide's blueprints. While wandering the city, I smelled fried food and sat down at a stall. A woman in a black robe was eating with incredible enthusiasm. She pushed an untouched plate toward me and called me by name. Golden hair, pointed ears, an elf. She introduced herself as Stella Rhea, a prophet. I checked her stats and my heart nearly stopped. Legendary talent, fortune and disaster sensing. Profession, master prophet plus senior mage. This was the fortune teller the city had supposedly hired. Except she told me she'd come on her own. Her master ability let her vaguely sense what would happen in the near future, including roughly what someone was about to say. Then she told me the real reason she'd sought me out. She'd foreseen the destruction of this city. Not from the underground city's 3rd or 4th floor monsters, something far worse. She mentioned a city 500 kilometers away that was destroyed 3 months ago when an adult sandworm broke through its walls. Sandworms were bigger than my entire shelter. The attack on our city would come on the evening before the second light day from now, 10 days away. She asked me to help defend the city. In return, the city would pay me in pink crystals, and she'd personally owe me a favor. I asked if she'd work for me. She said prophets and mages needed magic towers to grow stronger, so she couldn't stay permanently, but she could help my shelter short-term. I thought it over carefully. I could see her stats: legendary talent, genuine concern, no deception. If the city fell, my shelter would lose its closest trading partner and supply line. My wonders couldn't be moved or rebuilt. Running wasn't ideal either. I agreed to help. I still had 2 unused archery master slots from the hunting goddess statue. 10 days to prepare. Stellarea mentioned other defenders. The Griffin family would be invited, a sword master named Seth would stay, and a neighboring city would send 100 soldiers. After she left, Aisha came back with Sylvia in fresh clothes. Later, Aisha told me that Sylvia had asked her about the northern Beastkin settlement. They supposedly had a way to stop the berserking. Sylvia wanted to know if Aisha would join them. Aisha told her the truth. Her master had already cured the curse. She would never go berserk again. I met old Griffin at the city gates. He handed me 3 pink crystals and a bag of blue ones, the remaining medicine water payments. Then he pulled me aside to talk about the prophet's warning. He'd gotten the same message about the city being in danger in 10 days. He was all in on defending. His shelter was right next to the city. If it fell, everything he'd built his whole life was gone. I told him I'd join the defense too. We'd do our best. He also reported on the pharmacist investigation. They'd bought some of our holy water to study, but couldn't figure out what it was. As for who specifically hired the soldiers to threaten me, he hadn't pinpointed them yet, but he'd set a trap. The old fox smiled and told me to wait for the rat to walk in. I told him we needed to change how we sold the water going forward. I'd been too reckless early on. The real power of the holy water wasn't curing disease. It was removing dark erosion from beastkin. Some beastkin had probably already bought the water and discovered this. If word got out that I had an unlimited supply of something that valuable, it would paint a target on my back. From now on, limited quantities. Make it rare and expensive. Keep it safe until my shelter was strong enough to handle the attention. Harper came back with all the forge equipment she needed. We headed home. The shelter was piled high with materials. The carpenters would arrive tomorrow. Aisha asked if Sylvia could drink from the holy spring. I told her of course, she didn't need to ask for that kind of thing anymore. Sylvia drank the water, and black smoke poured out of her body. Another curse lifted. Then Aisha and I got to work on the castle. She'd memorized the entire blueprint. She could build it with her eyes closed, she told me proudly. She'd been dreaming about waking up inside it every night. I redesigned it as a 3-story structure. The ground floor would enclose the holy spring and treasure basin, our 2 most important secrets hidden inside the building where no visitor could see them. The spring would supply the whole castle with water through pipes I'd shaped from crystal using my master ability. The first floor also had a dining hall, main bathroom, meeting room, and storage. Second floor was the living quarters, over 10 bedrooms, including mine. Third floor had 5 or 6 more rooms, a secure vault for valuables, and a wide rooftop terrace where archers could stand and fight alongside the arrow towers during emergencies. No basement. The Polar Frost Nest Wonder would handle cold storage when I built it later. With both of us being architecture masters and the Crystal Tower amplifying our abilities, we estimated about 1 week to finish. If the carpenters got the furniture done in time, we could move in right after. We didn't tear down the old cabin, just used the tower to slide it aside. Then Aisha used her transport ability to clear the sandy soil, and we laid the foundation together. I taught her all the modern construction basics I knew. We worked in perfect sync. The new slaves watched us reshaping stone and moving earth with our bare willpower. They stared like they were witnessing gods at work. Harper walked over to them with a bucket of holy water. She told them it was a blessing from the master that would remove their curse. They wouldn't go berserk ever again. Disbelief turned to cautious questions, turned to overwhelming joy. After they drank and felt the darkness leave their bodies, every single one of them knelt facing my direction. After the holy water raised all the new slaves' loyalty above 60, Aisha and I finished laying the castle foundation and called it a night. I watched the 5 arrow towers handle the evening assault and thought about my remaining 2 archery master slots. My body was weak. I could barely pull an 80-pound bow, but I'd realized the master ability compensated for physical strength. My guided arrows hit harder than a regular archer with a much stronger bow, and I had an advantage nobody else in this world had. I knew how to design a compound bow. The special structure of a compound bow stores and releases energy far more efficiently, roughly 1.6 to 2 times the power of a regular bow at the same draw weight. That meant my 80-pound compound bow would hit like a 160-pound longbow. In this entire world, people who could pull 160 pounds could be counted on one hand. With armor-piercing arrowheads, I could punch through a magic lizard's scales easily. I'd basically become a walking sniper tower that fired tracking arrows. For the 2 remaining archery master slots, I chose Ron, the boy from the mine with the rare killing intent detection talent and loyalty at 82, and Waft, the dog beastkin with night vision. Perfect for nighttime defense. Next morning, I drank fresh milk, ate fried eggs, and rode to the mountain shelter. The Fallen Star Forge had a massive foundation already built, far bigger than any previous wonder. Impressive progress from over a dozen workers in one day. I gave Harper some blueprints for construction hardware, hinges, nails, basic metal parts, and left her at the old forge to work. I checked everyone's loyalty. Most were around 70. Kieran sat at a miserable 40, but I didn't care. I brought Ron and Harper back to the main shelter. I called Ron and Waft together and told them I was giving them master-level abilities. Both were stunned. I transferred the last 2 streams of power from the hunting goddess statue into them. While they absorbed the knowledge, I went to meet the carpenter crew. The lead carpenter, Elijah, was studying my furniture blueprints with wide eyes. He called the designs brilliant and asked which master had drawn them. I told him not to worry about that and asked how long the job would take. 1 week for most of it, he said. Then he got to his real question. How much would I charge for the rights to copy these designs and sell them to nobles and other tower masters? I thought about it. Copyright protection didn't exist here. I could draw new designs anytime. So I traded him the blueprints in exchange for free labor on this job, him covering any extra wood costs, and discounted rates on future work. He agreed eagerly. The designs were worth more than I'd guessed. Aisha had been building the forge room since dawn. It already had a basic frame. Harper stored her tools inside, rolled up her sleeves, and grabbed her hammer. She said she'd make my compound bow first. She had plenty of experience crafting bows. The wooden frame came together quickly, but the metal components, the limb tips, cams, and axles, would take longer to forge. While she worked, the Beastkin crew finished the guardian statues. 4 stone figures, each one able to come alive and patrol the shelter through the night. 1 more layer of security in place. I activated the guardian statues and they expanded into 4 towering figures, a swordsman, an archer, a spearman, and a shield bearer. Each stood over 10 meters tall. At night, 1 would randomly come alive and patrol until dawn. With their sheer size and weight, crushing regular monsters would be like stepping on bugs. This gave me peace of mind for when I'd leave to defend the city in a week. I started the next wonder, the Blessed Beehive. 5 days to build with the God of Architecture bonus. It would produce honey that blessed anyone who ate it, plus provide housing for 10 people. I was dying to know what the blessing actually did. FIA came running when she heard about the beehive. Her face lit up at the mention of honey. I teased her about having a sweet tooth like a child. Her face twisted up, but then I admitted I was craving something sweet too. She nudged my leg with her elbow and offered to brew honey wine if I raised her pay. I lowered my voice and told her this wasn't ordinary honey. It was a strategic resource. If she wanted access, she'd need to sign a long-term contract. She went quiet and thought hard. She'd left home to become a master, and she'd achieved that. What now? Go back east and brag to her family. That felt hollow. She realized this shelter gave her something she'd chased across half a continent: constant discovery. Everything here was new. In just a few days, it had become home. She asked if there was a level beyond Master. I said of course. My stats showed Architecture Master at 2 out of 50. She grinned and said she'd work for me until she surpassed Master level. I told her that was too vague. I needed a fixed term. She gritted her teeth and signed for 5 years. For a halfling, that was 1/10 of their lifespan. I promised her unlimited honey in 5 days. She was already planting fruit trees for honey wine. 3 days passed. Every night the monsters grew stronger. More magic lizards, and now swarms of bats filled the sky. The Scatter Tower and Flame Tower handled them, but it was getting tight. The Guardian statues proved their worth. 2 of the 3 nights, the Shield Guardian activated. Any monster that entered the shelter got smashed flat by a giant stone shield. Construction moved fast. The castle frame was up, a C-shaped structure with the crystal tower in the center. The Holy Spring and Treasure Basin were enclosed inside the central hall, hidden from outside view. Along the castle's edge, I built slave dormitories first. 2 per room, with a shared bathroom outside. I had to strictly order everyone to use the toilets. The first 2 days of people relieving themselves wherever they pleased nearly killed me. The carpenter Elijah and his dozen apprentices were efficient. They built whatever I drew. Doors and windows were done. Furniture was still in progress. Harper's temporary forge had produced enough nails and hinges to keep up, and we solved the glass problem. Moj led my miners to a crystal cave inside the mountain shelter. I used my shaping ability to reshape the raw crystal into thin, clear sheets. Better transparency than real glass. FIA signed her 5-year contract with a satisfied smile. She was already planting fruit trees. Old Griffin and Luke came by and couldn't hide their reactions to the castle. Even as just a frame, the white marble outline with its bold lines and curved rooftop, surrounded by the wonder statues, was striking. Luke stared with envy. Old Griffin muttered to himself. He'd figured it out. I was an architecture master. No one was helping me. I was doing it myself. He asked me directly. I confirmed it. His eyes practically sparkled. In this world's hierarchy, architecture masters sat above everything. Combat masters like archers and swordsmen were respected, but a building master could raise an impenetrable fortress in a week. And in a fight, the master abilities were devastating too. Aisha at full power could collapse the ground into a 10-meter crater. I could spike stone pillars out of the earth. The title of strongest profession wasn't hype. It was proven across centuries. Old Griffin tried to hire me to renovate his shelter. I told him he'd have to wait. My schedule was packed. He laughed nervously and said no rush. Then he shared good news. A merchant named Tony had found him and volunteered to handle our medicine water distribution to distant cities. He'd offered incredibly generous terms. I recognized the name immediately, the slave trader I'd rescued from the mountain mine just days ago. He'd already bounced back and was using his old trade networks. I told Griffin to trust him. Tony owed me, and he'd keep my identity secret. I showed them something special, Harper's completed compound bow. Old Griffin and Luke were both lifelong archers, and neither had seen anything like it. The pulley system confused them completely, but the moment Old Griffin drew it and felt how light the full draw was, then saw the arrow slam into the target with twice the expected force, his jaw dropped. I explained I'd make several more before the city defense. Old Griffin could pull a 120-pound compound bow, which would deliver over 200 pounds of impact, enough with armor-piercing arrows to punch through a ground dragon's hide. Luke fell in love with it too. His strength wasn't as great as his father's, so the compound bow would massively boost his combat power. I asked them to keep the design secret. They agreed immediately. 2 days later, Wednesday, I'd been so exhausted from non-stop construction that I overslept. Aisha knocked on my door with breakfast and exciting news. The blessed beehive was finished. A full day ahead of schedule. The beastkin workers had been pushing themselves incredibly hard. Once they realized they'd get 3 meals a day with meat, they'd thrown everything into the job. They'd shaved an entire day off the estimated build time. The Fallen Star Forge at the mountain shelter was probably done today too. With the war horses, I could ride there in 20 minutes. I'd check this afternoon. But first, the beehive. The description said every drop of honey could bless mortals. I'd been dying to find out what that actually meant. I went to the back of the castle where the blessed beehive stood, a massive hollow stone cylinder, 3 stories tall, wide as a basketball court. FIA had been waiting there since dawn. She'd planted flower seeds from her collection all around it, and thanks to the Horn of Plenty, they were already budding. I activated it. The building expanded, glowing amber. The hollow spaces filled with golden crystal, and inside I could see a fat queen bee stretching out, preparing to lay eggs. A sweet floral scent drifted through the air. The interior was spacious. 10 people could live inside comfortably. The actual hive occupied the outer shell behind the crystal walls. The queen was producing eggs at an incredible rate, energized by whatever power the golden crystal held. FIA immediately claimed a room inside. She wanted to live next to her bees and set up a brewing station. I told Aisha to get her some furniture. I was tempted to move in myself. The flower scent was intoxicating, but the castle was almost done. I did move my handmade lounge chair over though. Next wonder on the list was the Holy Shield. Doubles walled durability and adds self-repair. It needed to be built onto existing walls, and I'd already started a section. I designed a clever wall layout. Instead of a full enclosure, the walls formed a maze with deliberate gaps on 2 sides. Monsters would see the openings and funnel through instead of attacking the walls. Inside those corridors, the arrow towers could concentrate fire on a tight kill zone. At the end of each funnel, I placed the indestructible wonder statues as the final barrier. Unbreakable statues plus self-repairing walls with doubled strength. That was a defense line nothing could easily crack. I transmitted the Holy Shield blueprint to the workers and announced unlimited food at lunch with extra meat for everyone. Both Aisha and I gained 3 more points in architecture just from supervising wonder construction. Still a long way from 50, but steady progress. The castle was nearly complete. I'd installed doors and windows, polished the walls smooth, carved decorative lines into the stone, and made some furniture from rock, table bases, stone chairs, candle holders. It looked like a natural, rustic style. Beds were done and placed in the rooms. We could move in tonight. In the afternoon, I rode to the mountain shelter with Harper. The Fallen Star Forge was finished. When I activated it, a colossal furnace materialized near the mine entrance, glowing with red magma light. At its core, a chunk of what looked like a meteorite floated and spun slowly, an eternal flame that would never go out. It doubled smelting speed and gave a 20% chance to improve equipment quality. Harper stared at it like she was looking at heaven. She asked to move her entire forge operation here. I agreed. The 2 shelters were close enough, and she was an archery master now, so traveling alone was safe. I spent half an hour using my shaping ability to build her a proper forge room right there. The rest of the materials could be carted over by Camel Beast. Then I realized the mountain shelter had more workers than it needed. With Moj the ground dragon helping dig, half the crew could handle mining and keep the forge supplied. I brought the other half back to the main shelter and put them on the polar frost nest, the cold storage wonder. Running 2 construction projects at 2 shelters simultaneously. Taking that second base was the single best decision I'd made so far. It gave me people, iron, and a forge all at once. Back at the main shelter, the castle was essentially done. Just finishing touches and furniture placement remained. My focus shifted to the walls. I reviewed my maze wall defense plan one more time, confirmed it was solid, and called Aisha over to start building. Aisha and I started building the walls. We used a segmented design so the crystal tower could move sections later for expansion. I drove stone pillars into the ground as foundations and used my shaping ability to create interlocking joints, top-level stability, and earthquake resistance without any mortar. The efficiency was insane. The 2 of us with the crystal towers helped matched several construction crews with heavy machinery. My ability compressed stone cutting errors to almost nothing. The wall rose visibly, like bamboo sprouting after rain. By evening, we had 2 or 3 meters standing. Final target was 10 meters. Any higher would be pointless against things that could jump that high. Then FIA called us over, bouncing with excitement. The blessed beehive already had bees flying around the flowers. She held up a glass bottle with a thin layer of honey she'd carefully extracted, apologizing for sneaking some before the colony fully established. She opened the bottle and inhaled a mouthful before I could stop her. Then I tried some. Sweet and rich, but that wasn't the important part. Power flowed into my body. I checked my status and saw a new line. Beehive blessing. Constitution increasing. I clenched my fist. I was noticeably stronger. Before, I could barely pull an 80-pound bow. Now I could handle 100. Aisha and FIA felt it too. FIA said her strength had doubled. I tried eating more. The status didn't change, 1 blessing per person. But even a single permanent boost to Constitution was extraordinary. This was the kind of effect that made magic potions worth fortunes. FIA analyzed what was happening. She'd planted mostly dragon blood flowers around the hive, a species known for boosting vitality. The bees made honey from those flowers, and the wonder amplified the effect into a permanent blessing. She suggested rotating in different flower types. A spirit-enhancing variety might boost mental power instead. I told her to experiment. Once we hit mass production, everyone in the shelter would get a dose, and the rest could be sold as premium medicine alongside the holy water. Days passed. The walls grew taller and wider, gradually enclosing the entire shelter. I positioned the arrow towers to cover every angle. The maze-like gaps funneled monsters along a preset path where the towers shredded them. At the end of each corridor stood an indestructible wonder statue. Monsters bit and clawed at them until their teeth broke. Then a guardian statue would step forward and crush whatever was left. The system worked beautifully. Then the day arrived. Old Griffin came with all 3 sons. Tomorrow night was the predicted attack on the city. Everyone except Luke looked worried. Old Griffin stared at my walls with envy and awe. Then he asked if he could send his family to my shelter for the night, to take refuge while we fought at the city. I said of course. I'd prepared my team. Aisha, Harper, and I, 3 archery masters, were geared up and ready at the gate. The other 2 masters were stationed at my 2 shelters. Whatever happened tonight, my home would be defended. Letting the Griffin family take shelter in my castle was no trouble at all. The interior was finished. I'd spent my downtime carving decorations, arranging furniture, and polishing every surface. The place looked like it belonged to someone far wealthier than a wasteland tower master. But I wasn't blindly trusting the prophet's claim that my shelter would be safe. That's why I'd pushed so hard on the walls. The main shelter had complete defenses now: walls, arrow towers, guardian statues, and an archery master on guard. The mountain shelter had Moj the ground dragon plus another archery master and fully upgraded towers. I'd covered every angle. I handed Old Griffin 3 compound bows and explained how to use them, slower than longbows, so alternate between both. The compound bow's advantage was double the power at the same draw weight, perfect for heavily armored monsters. On the way to the city, Old Griffin opened up. He talked about growing up on the wasteland, how his father called it a blessing from the gods, crystal towers that could turn desert into farmland. But he'd always felt it was a curse. Endless monsters that dissolved into sand when killed, underground cities with sealed horrors, and no answers about any of it. He said he was getting old and couldn't protect his family much longer. I told him not to worry. People don't lose to their environment. We'd uncover the truth eventually. He laughed and said he was being foolish. The future belonged to the young. We arrived at the city. The military buildup was impressive: cavalry, siege weapons, massive crossbows, and arrow towers lining every wall. I had to resist the urge to steal it all for my shelter. Stellaria the prophet appeared in her black robe and handed me a commander's badge. Any soldier on the walls would follow my orders. I asked where she'd be tonight. She smiled mysteriously and said I'd find out. Old Griffin left to handle the medicine water business. Harper went shopping for forge supplies. I took Aisha to the slave market. With the Holy Shield and Polar Frost Nest finishing in 2 days, page 4 of the guide would unlock soon. I was certain it would demand even more workers. Better to stock up now. I found Tiga in a panic. The city lord had ordered all beastkin locked down tight as a security risk before tonight's attack. The military kept shooting hostile glares at his stock. He was terrified. I bought all 34 of his remaining beastkin, 18 dog types, 5 lizards, 3 rats, and 8 sheep types. He gave me rock-bottom prices and practically wept with gratitude. I had them all shipped to my shelter with slave contracts signed. As Aisha and I walked into the city afterward, she noticed something I'd already felt: eyes following us. 2 people in green robes, tracking our movements. I ducked into an alley, cutting their line of sight. They followed. The moment they stepped into the narrow passage, an arrow whistled past and embedded itself right next to one of their heads. Aisha had her dagger at one man's throat before he could blink. I had an arrow pointed at the other. They threw their hands up immediately. They were from the Pharmacist Guild, sent by their branch leader Green Jodo to watch Old Griffin and anyone connected to him. One of them kept glancing at his pocket. I reached in and pulled out a crystal bottle, an explosive. Throw it on the ground and it detonates. They swore they weren't planning to use it. That Jodo had forced them. Any pharmacist who wanted to work in the city had to follow his orders. I pieced it together fast. Tonight's chaos was the perfect cover. In the confusion of battle, nobody would notice 2 small-time tower masters dying. And after the fight, injuries would spike demand for medicine. If our holy water was still on the market, it would eat into the guild's profits. Jodo couldn't wait any longer. I needed to warn Old Griffin. Aisha knocked both men unconscious, and we headed for the commercial district. Then the sky went dark. At noon, people panicked in the streets. I grabbed Aisha's hand and pushed through the crowd toward the city gate. Harper was already there waiting, along with the entire Griffin family. We all stared at the sky. Heavy, oppressive clouds. The air felt like a storm was about to break. I flashed my commander's badge at the gate captain, a massive knight named Brandon Wess. I checked his stats. Epic talent called Commander, triple expert in Knight, Swordsman, and Archer. Born for the battlefield. He looked at my badge, then at me, and grumbled about giving top-level clearance to a kid. When he saw Aisha and Harper, he nearly lost it, 2 beastkin on his wall. He warned me he'd kill them personally if they went berserk. We climbed the wall and looked out. Darkness was spreading across the horizon, getting deeper by the second. Then monsters appeared. Berserk, charging the city from every direction. The wall-mounted arrow towers opened fire. Soldiers muttered about a similar event 5 years ago, 3 months of total darkness. They called it the Eternal Night. Pure hell. A massive shape pushed up from the earth on the horizon, like a mountain rising from underground, glowing green. The entire ground shook. Brandon's voice trembled. The underground city is surfacing. One of the 10 great calamities, he explained. When the underground city rises, it vomits endless waves of monsters. Floors 1 through at least 10. Ground dragons were only floor 3. Floor 10 could spawn tier 4 creatures, including elite monsters and bosses with elemental magic or enchanted weapons. The siege would last until the next light day. We were lucky. That was tomorrow. One night, Brandon tried to crack a joke about our good luck. I didn't laugh. I asked if the surrounding shelters would be hit. He said the underground city was so close to the city that the monsters would focus here, not bother with distant shelters. My first thought was how many blue crystals my treasure basin would have collected if this was happening at home. Aisha and I looked at each other. We were thinking the exact same thing. Brandon drew his sword and roared across the wall. Draw your bows. Prepare to defend. Back at my shelter, Waft stood on the walls with his bow. He had night vision and could see everything in the dark. I'd left him in charge, and he was ready to die defending the place. But it turned out he didn't need to. The maze walls funneled every monster into the kill zone. The guardian statue in shield form smashed them like a hammer hitting bugs. The arrow towers shredded the rest. Nothing even reached the final line of wonder statues. Waft scratched his head and stopped shooting. There was nothing left to shoot at. At the city, it was a different story. The arrow towers on the walls handled the first waves easily enough. Then the third-floor creatures arrived. A line of giant trolls marching forward with goblin shamans hiding behind them. Brandon ordered all archers to target the shamans. But they were smart this time. They stayed behind the trolls and wouldn't show themselves. The dead monsters from the earlier waves started standing back up, glowing green, slamming their broken bodies against the walls. Pressure on the defenders doubled instantly. Brandon was shocked. These monsters weren't fully berserk. They had some intelligence, or someone was directing them. The wall-mounted sniper towers couldn't reach the shamans, over 400 meters out, beyond their range. I pulled out my compound bow. At 100 pounds of draw weight, it hit like a 180-pound longbow. In an arcing shot, maximum range exceeded 500 meters. And with my master ability, I could guide the arrow the entire way. Turns, acceleration, precision strikes at any distance within that range. Brandon saw me draw and told me not to bother. One more bow wouldn't make a difference. He said he admired my courage for being so young. I ignored him and fired upward. The arrow screamed through the air so fast that every soldier on the wall turned to watch. They'd never seen anything move like that. People started asking what kind of enchanted bow I was using. My eyes glowed blue as my mind merged with the arrow. 300 meters out, it began its descent. I locked onto a shaman waving its staff behind a troll and drove the arrow straight through its skull. It dropped dead. Brandon had tracked the entire flight path. His face went white. He'd fought in wars, humans against monsters, humans against humans. He knew exactly how terrifying a guided arrow was on a battlefield. No commander could ever peek above a shield. He whispered one word, "Master." I didn't answer. I was already knocking the second arrow. It flew. Another shaman died. Soldiers along the wall spotted the falling shamans and started cheering. The walking dead collapsed back to the ground. 7 shamans total. 7 arrows. 7 kills. Without the shamans controlling corpses, the trolls were just big targets. The wall towers peppered them with fire and armor-piercing bolts until they fell. Then came the bats, a massive swarm from the sky. The towers swept them like rain. But hidden above the swarm, a huge bird monster with an enormous wingspan dove straight down onto one of the arrow towers and slammed its claws into it. Someone screamed a warning. A griffin, half lion, half eagle, massive wingspan, razor claws. It dove out of the bat swarm and slammed into one of the wall's sniper towers. Brandon panicked. Griffins were supposed to be floor 10 creatures. Worse, this one had used the bats as cover and specifically targeted the most dangerous tower. It was thinking. The soldiers fired at it, but their arrows bounced off its feathered hide like twigs. Then from the other wall, a blue lightning bolt struck the griffin, old Griffin's magic bow ability. The electric shock paralyzed it briefly. My first thought wasn't how to kill it. It was how to tame it. A griffin as a mount. I'd give anything. But the Horn of Submission was back at my shelter and still on cooldown. The griffin shook off the paralysis. The lightning arrow had left a wound on its chest. Furious, it dove toward old Griffin. Harper was ready. Her armor-piercing arrow punched clean through its wing. It screamed and veered away, climbing back into the sky. I fired too. 3 of us hit it with arrows, opening wounds across its body, but it dodged every lethal shot. It escaped. Brandon said it was only a juvenile. Adults could use wind magic that deflected all projectiles. That was terrifying to think about. He also finally noticed that Harper, the dog beastkin standing next to me, was another archery master. I could see him struggling with the fact that 2 beastkin on his wall were more useful than most of his soldiers. Brandon turned out to be the 2nd Night Squad captain from Emerald City, a much larger city to the west. He'd been sent with troops to help defend. I asked if he wanted to work for me. He politely declined. He'd sworn loyalty to his city lord. The battle settled into a grind. Endless waves of low-level monsters. No more elite threats for now. Aisha handed me jerky and holy water. I ate quietly. It was only early evening by normal time. Light day wouldn't come until 6 in the morning. Long night ahead. Then something new crawled out of the sand. Skeletons. Human skeletons, animal skeletons, monster skeletons. They were weak. 1 arrow and they fell apart. But there were thousands of them. Nobody knew what they were. We all assumed it was just another type of monster. Back at my shelter, Waft watched the same skeletons approaching. With night vision, he could see everything. The maze walls and towers handled it all. He barely needed to fire. At the mountain shelter, Moj guarded the single entrance. Ron bounced his arrows off the cave walls with his master ability, picking off anything that slipped through. The sealed passages held. Deep underground beneath the city, something else was happening that I wouldn't learn about until later. Stellarea the Prophet stood on a black stone platform, hands pressed against a floating crystal that looked like a smaller version of a crystal tower core, except it shimmered like it contained an entire galaxy. A fuzzy black ball sat on her shoulder, some kind of creature, talking to her. She'd discovered something unexpected about this disaster. It wasn't a normal underground city emergence. There were clues about the curse of the wasteland hidden in it. She said if her teacher had known, they would have come personally. She was channeling power through a temporary star tower built from scrolls, trying to use a fraction of her main tower's strength to help defend the city. She whispered to herself that we just had to hold on until morning. Hours passed, and the skeletons kept getting worse. More of them, bigger ones, faster. The towers couldn't keep up anymore. Aisha nudged me and pointed at one skeleton. It was taller than the others, wearing rusted armor, and carrying a hollow longsword with a glowing blue gemstone in the center. Every swing released a blade of blue light. An enchanted weapon. Brandon said only rare enchanters or master-level mages could make those. I wanted it immediately, but going down there meant drowning in monsters. So I tried something crazy. I shot an arrow at the sword, threading it through the hollow gap in the blade. The arrow carried the sword upward, but quickly lost momentum. Before it could fall, I fired a second arrow that hit the sword midair and pushed it further toward the wall. Then a third, and a fourth. The entire wall section watched in silence as I used over a dozen arrows to relay the sword through the air, each one catching it and sending it closer. The final arrow bounced the sword right into my hand. Aisha cheered. Brandon swore in every wasteland curse he knew. I swung the sword forward and a blue energy blade extended from it, carving a chunk out of the wall corner. Incredibly powerful, even though the blade itself was ancient and corroded. The gemstone in the center was flawless. Harper stared at it and begged to study it. She said understanding its construction might be the key to becoming a forging master. I told her she could examine it when we got home. Then the ground stopped shaking. The underground city had finished rising, over 10 floors visible, a massive black tower carved with strange patterns stretching into the dark sky. Brandon exhaled. If it had gone higher, he said he would have run. Then something flew out of the tower. A bone dragon. An entire dragon skeleton held together by dark magic, with enormous wings and crushing pressure radiating from its body. Half the soldiers on the wall dropped their weapons. Some collapsed. Some started praying. Aisha and Harper grabbed my arms, trembling. The instinctive terror of prey facing an apex predator. I gripped my compound bow. If it showed its face, I'd put an arrow in it. Then a voice rang out behind us. Stellaria rose from the city center on her black stone platform, golden hair flowing, casting spell after spell, group enhancement, holy light enchantment, mass healing. Green light wrapped around every soldier. White radiance coated my bow. My exhaustion faded and my strength surged. Her voice appeared directly in my ear through magic. Aim for the eye socket. I drew my bow. Holy light gathered from nowhere, splitting the darkness, pouring into my arrow like a spotlight in a dark theater. I released. The arrow tore through the bone dragon's eye socket. Black energy exploded outward. The dragon's dive stopped midair, and it shrieked, a sound like metal scraping bone. Stellaria floated to the wall on her platform. She said it was just a 1,000-year-old dragon corpse, nothing more. Then she told me we needed to go inside the underground city and kill whoever was controlling these skeletons. I pointed at myself. She had to be joking. She said she'd also recruited a sword master. An old man with gray hair stood on the next wall section, gripping a longsword. His name was Seth. He sighed and said if a young person had the guts to go in, an old man like him had nothing to fear. I looked at the endless skeleton army pouring from the tower, took a deep breath, and told Stellaria her compensation had better be worth it. I called Aisha and Harper. We stepped onto the floating platform. I checked the old swordsman's stats. Seth Finch. Epic talent. Sword mastery. His sword master level was at 38 out of 50, the highest I'd ever seen on anyone. He also had a cooking expert skill, which was unexpected. His status said he was tired but burning with fighting spirit, thinking this might be his last battle. He was a wandering mercenary who'd arrived near the city last week and stayed when Stellaria asked. We shook hands. He complimented my youth, and I complimented his swordsmanship. I invited him to visit my shelter after this was over. He said he'd love to. The bone dragon crashed down. Stellaria gripped her crystal ball and flew us toward the underground city on her platform. We entered through a gap at the base of the massive black tower. On the way in, she briefed us. Archaeologists had confirmed that a kingdom existed here 500 years ago. They built this underground city to hide from something, but they were destroyed anyway. The city had dozens of floors, maybe 100, most still sealed. The seals were weakening. The skeleton army was being controlled by someone, a figure that appeared in murals found in previously explored sections. A general from that ancient kingdom. He was long dead, but his body was still animated by its own magic. Our mission: destroy him and search his quarters for information about the curse on the wasteland. We dove inside. It wasn't what I expected. Not a building interior, but a self-contained world. Soil, roads, structures, glowing ceiling high above. Like a dark underground realm. Stellaria pointed to a distant altar surrounded by objects that looked like crystal tower cores. She parked the platform and buffed everyone with magic. She explained her floating stone platform was a miniature star tower built from scrolls, channeling power from her teacher's real magic tower far away. It could fail at any moment. We needed to be fast. Seth drew his sword and charged. The man was beyond human limits, cutting through skeletons like paper. Aisha unleashed her rapid-fire ability, clearing the path ahead in seconds. Harper and I provided range support. I spotted the target on the altar, a robed skeleton holding a staff, staring down at a stone tablet. I fired a holy light arrow at it from over 300 meters. Something invisible stopped it cold, inches from the skeleton's face. Stellaria tried next. A massive blade of light materialized above the skeleton and swung down with earth-shaking force. It stopped at the top of its skull, blocked by the same barrier. The black fuzzy creature on her shoulder panicked. It said the skeleton was drawing power from the entire underground city. Too strong for us. Armored skeletons with weapons appeared. Powerful, fearless, endless. Seth started getting worn down. I tossed him a vial of holy water. He drank it without hesitation, and his speed surged back. Then I threw him the enchanted sword I'd recovered earlier. Blue light exploded across the battlefield as he carved through everything in reach. I kept firing at the skeleton general. Nothing got through its shield. I tried the crystal cores around the altar. Same result. The situation was getting desperate. Skeletons were closing in from behind too. Seth glanced back and said we could still retreat if we left now. He had one more burst left in him. Stellaria was sweating, pressing her crystal ball with trembling hands. Then the stone platform blazed with light. The black ball on her shoulders squeaked that the old one was coming, entering its body. The squeaky voice vanished, replaced by a mature woman's tone. Stellaria, you reckless child. When you get back, you're grounded in the tower for 10 years. The voice from the black ball was Stellaria's teacher, a powerful mage channeling herself through the creature from far away. She shouted that Stellaria should detonate the highest energy object nearby to break the necromancer's shield. Stellaria grabbed her crystal ball without hesitation and hurled it at the skeleton. The ball erupted in a massive explosion that shattered the protective barrier completely. The black ball screamed in horror. That crystal ball had cost 50 years of blue crystal savings. The teacher had meant the enchanted weapon's gemstone, not the crystal ball. But it was too late. Seth and I moved at the same time. I shot the staff out of the necromancer's hand. Seth blazed forward with the enchanted sword trailing blue light and brought it down on the skeleton's skull. Aisha and Harper fired arrows that hit without being blocked this time. The necromancer shattered into bone fragments. Stellaria hit it with one last holy spell. But the bones started reassembling, wrapped in black energy. The thing was putting itself back together. Seth kicked the staff toward me, and a bone spike shot up from the ground and stabbed him through the side. Blood sprayed everywhere. I checked the necromancer's stats. Maxwell the Withered Bone. Master Necromancer at 49 out of 50, 1 point from the maximum. And his status showed an active curse, Undeath Curse. That's why he kept rebuilding. Then I had an idea. I pulled out my emergency vial of holy water, tied it to an arrow with a strip of cloth, dodged a bone spike, and fired. The vial shattered against the skeleton's eye socket. The same hissing sound I'd heard when curing beastkin of dark erosion. The bones collapsed and didn't get back up. The curse was broken. I rushed the altar and grabbed everything valuable, for unknown crystal cores and the stone tablet the necromancer had been staring at. Harper threw Seth on her back, grabbed the enchanted sword, and faced the confused skeleton army. The skeletons didn't disappear immediately, but they stopped receiving commands. Stellaria said they'd fade once their stored magic ran out, and no new ones would be generated. Aisha and I raised our hands together. Using our architecture master abilities simultaneously, we split the ground open like a wave, pushing rubble and skeletons aside, raising spike walls on both sides to create a clear corridor to the exit. Seth stared in disbelief from Harper's back. 2 architecture masters. We ran. Outside, the battle was winding down. The skeletons had gone stupid, attacking everything around them, including other monsters. Old Griffin was unleashing his full power on the walls, every lightning arrow creating an electric net that dismantled entire groups. The underground city began sinking back into the earth behind us. Stellaria walked beside me, exhausted. She thanked me and admitted her teacher was right. She'd been reckless. Then she realized something worse. She'd destroyed her teacher's crystal ball. The 10-year grounding was the least of her problems. She'd probably have to work in mines to pay it back. Suddenly, she looked up at the wall. Someone in a green robe was pulling a potion from his pocket, staring at old Griffin's back. It was the pharmacist guild leader, Green Jodo, trying to assassinate Griffin in the chaos. Stellaria raised her hand. Storm clouds gathered. A bolt of lightning struck the man from the sky and held for 30 seconds straight. When it stopped, he was charcoal. The pharmacist's problem solved itself. We made it back inside and collapsed. Seth was bandaged up and drinking holy water to heal. The rest of us gathered around a table with our loot, for unknown crystal cores, the necromancer's staff, and the stone tablet. Stellaria asked for the stone tablet. She was the only one who could read the ancient writing. It might hold clues about the wasteland curse and why the monsters existed. I agreed, as long as she shared whatever she found. Then she looked at the 4 crystal cores and said she might know what they were.